Hey now, it is a feel-good Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. It's a preseason Red Friday as well. That's right, Chiefs Saints coming up on Sunday. We'll tell you what to watch for coming up here in a minute. Matt Derrick is going to stop by. We'll talk to Mitch Holthus. A lot of Chiefs to get to coming up on 580 Sports Talk today. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are here with you all the way till 6 today. We got a full show. Royals are not having an early first pitch and an early pregame show today. So we've got the full show coming your way over the next 3 hours. As I mentioned, have a bunch of Chiefs to get to. We'll tell you what to watch for here in just a second. Matt Derrick will join us bottom of this hour on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for our Chiefs Insider. And we'll play our weekly round of Change My Mind coming up here in just about 20 minutes. Also, today over at ESPN, Mike Clay with a ranking for every position group, every team in the league, 1 through 32. The Chiefs are number one at a couple of spots that are pretty dang obvious. They are near the bottom of the league at several other spots. We'll break it down, what's fair, what's not, coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today, plus 5 o'clock hour, 5:25 exactly. Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, is going to join us for our Chiefs training camp report. It's checklist day, preseason game this weekend. That means we will get Mitch's checklist for what he is watching for in the game coming up this weekend. Also have some college football to get to in the 4 o'clock hour. Who is the most important non-quarterback for both KU and K-State? I think that is a fascinating question, and I think it's a difficult one to answer for both sides. So we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on today. Of course, we've got What Is Wrong With You, a full edition of our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll preview the weekend set for the Royals. All that coming up in the next 3 hours right here on 580 Sports Talk. Your texts are welcome. Text line number, you know it, 785-272-9429. YouTube comment section wide open as well. Our channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Thank you so much to everybody who's already watching, listening along, either on the AM, on the FM, or online at 580WIBW.com. Some bittersweet celebration as we got started with the show today. Our good pal Fulton Caster wrapping up his final day with us at the end of Mic'd Up. It was fun to celebrate with him a little bit, get his final mic drop before we return to 4 hours of 580 Sports Talk coming up on Monday. That's right, this Monday, 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, the 4-hour, 3-man edition of 580 Sports Talk coming back next week. Sad to see our pal go, but I'm happy for him. I really am.
Yeah, it's exciting for him to be able to make that decision again. That he's done what he can do here, and he wants to try something else, branch out and try something new in life. And we're all pulling for him. We know he's going to do great because he's a hard worker. He's motivated. He's smart, and he's a great people person. So I think Fulton's going to be awesome at the thing that comes next for him. And we are going to miss him around here, though. I'm not joking when I say that, like, doing the Immaculate Grid with Fulton has been one of the highlights of my day here the last couple of months. So I'm going to miss that. But no, we're excited for him. But it is definitely a day tinged with melancholy around the 580 Sports gang.
Yeah, no doubt. Wishing nothing but the best for Fulton. And I know he definitely appreciates all the kind words from you guys as well on the text line, on Twitter, on the YouTube comments, and all of that. We do have some sports to preview, to look ahead to coming up this weekend. Chiefs Saints preseason opener. It will be on Sunday. Of course, you know where you can hear the Chiefs radio network right here on 580 WIBW. What to watch for this weekend? Nothing too specific, nothing too outlined. We're not getting into our regular season keys to the game as of yet. A little more free form here. It's the preseason. When Bill Self used to wear the suit and tie for regular season and postseason games, it was always a big deal when KU would play Washburn or Hayes or Pitt or Emporia or whoever, because it was no tie. It was, Bill Self's looking casual. No tie, top button undone, just the sport coat on. Now he wears a quarter zip for every game. But that's what this is. That is what our what to watch for the preseason is in 580 Sports Talk parlance. The first thing I've got in mind that I'm going to be paying attention to, specifically because we know that Charles Omenihu is not going to play the first 6 weeks of the regular season, which means the guys behind him on the depth chart are going to have to step up, and they're going to have to play a little bit more. That means Mike Dana more, fully healthy Mike Dana, but we already know what Mike Dana is. We know what he can be at this point. But Felix Anudike-Uzomah, B.J. Thompson, the rookies from K-State and Stephen F. Austin, respectively. Hell, you want to throw in a couple of those other guys in there, too, the undrafted guys. Malik Herring has been around the team for a couple of years. Josh Kando is indeed still on the roster. He is a real person. He is actually indeed on the Chiefs roster. That is the group that I am going to be paying attention to, because what do these guys have? What can they offer for that first third of the season when the Chiefs don't have Charles Omenihu? I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to be a good NFL player. I really do. But we have talked, and we talked about this at the draft, he's going to have to bulk up a little bit. But he's young. He's got the body to fill out. Not worried about that long term. I want to see right off the rip, how does he look against NFL-sized, NFL-caliber linemen, even if it's backups? Admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about B.J. Thompson. I was not eating that Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks tape from the last 2 seasons. I've seen the highlights. I know what the Chiefs like about him. I just want to see what kind of juice he has when he gets out there on the field. And if you want to expand it to the whole defensive line, talked about Keandre Coburn on yesterday's show. I want to see what he's got. There has been so much talk about how big and athletic he is, specifically athletic for the kind of size he has out there. So I'm looking forward to see what he can offer too. Really, those young defensive line players against the Saints, that is probably where I'm going to be focusing the majority of my attention.
There's going to be a theme, I think, in our discussion of this first preseason game, and I think it's a theme with us. I'm sure it was a theme with Fulton and Jake. I bet it's a theme on any sort of show that's talking about any of the 32 NFL teams. The most fascinating thing you get to see in game one of the preseason is all of these young players, all of these rookies, they are NFL players now. They are in the NFL jerseys. They are taking the field in an NFL game, and you get to see what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And that is my interest on the defensive side as well when we're looking at this game. My interest is in the defensive backfield. Last year, Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams served immediate notice that they could be players. They were really good right off the rip in preseason. They flashed in every one of the preseason games. And when the rubber met the road in the regular season, it turned out that the Chiefs could count on them, that they could count on Jalen Watson, that he made some huge plays for them during the season. They could count on Joshua Williams to be valuable depth at that defensive back position. To say nothing of their first-round pick, Trent McDuffie, who didn't play a ton in the preseason last year because he wasn't fighting for a roster spot. Everybody knew he was locked on, one of the starters on the boundary. And then, of course, didn't get to play much early in the year because he got hurt in week 1. But when he rejoined the starting defense, the starting secondary, he was really, it's not an understatement to say he was transformational, his impact as a rookie.
For sure.
So we've got some new guys back there this year, too. We have the 4th-round pick out of Virginia Tech, Shamari Connor. We have the 7th-round pick out of Ball State, Nick Jones. With the undrafted Lawrence product, Echo Boydo, the former K-State Wildcat. I want to see if those guys flash. Not just in game 1, but certainly all of preseason. I want to see if those guys look like they are pieces that could be counted on, because you can never have too much depth at 2 spots, I think, on the field. One is edge. You never have too many guys who can get after the quarterback, as you talked about. But you can also never have too many guys who can hold it down at cornerback, who can play within the scheme, who can make plays on the ball, who can hold their own in one-on-one coverage against some of the beastly receivers that you're going to see on a week-in, week-out basis in the National Football League.
And that's sort of what the Chiefs have done with their secondary, right? Because we talk all the time about how they're so good. Brett Veach and his staff have been so good at finding those late-round or undrafted or cheap trade market guys who come in and make an instant impact. But they've just brought in a bunch of players and say, hey, look, if we just throw numbers at the spot, so to speak, we're going to end up finding the right guys. I mean, look at last year's class. You mentioned the guys who were playing well. The best defensive back in camp until he got hurt was Nazeeh Johnson, who was nothing more than a special teams guy a year ago. They have found so many, not just, wow, they keep hitting 1-for-1 on all these draft picks, but they're finding these depth guys. They're finding projection guys. You go back a few years ago, you had Rashad Fenton, who was the 6th-round pick. They took 2 defensive backs that year, safety Juan Thornhill and Rashad Fenton. L'Jarius Sneed, the 4th-round guy. They drafted another defensive back that year. If you remember, they drafted Bo Pete Keys out of Tulane that year. They traded for Charvarius Ward. He was originally with the Cowboys. Do you remember who they traded to get him?
It was a lineman.
Parker Enger.
You
know what Parker Enger's up to these days? Not getting that Charvarius Ward contract.
No.
Okay?
Probably teaching gym.
Damn. Roasting him. They did not draft anyone in the defensive backfield in 21, but then a million dudes last year, all the guys they've brought in this year. The fact that they've just got so many numbers, I think is fun for us preseason-wise because we get to pick out, hey, look, remember when we heard this guy was great in college and now he's great in the NFL too, even though he maybe is undersized? Oh, you mean like the guy from Lawrence who played at K-State, Echo Boydo? Like, I think he's going to make the roster for what it's worth. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do against some receivers that aren't the Chiefs receivers.
I think it's going to be him and Nick Jones. I think it's going to be in between those two for a roster spot, and the other one probably makes a practice squad.
The next one for me, and I know we've got a little overlap here, which of the fringe receivers does something that makes you say, wow? Which one of them makes a splash? Or if you want to look at it the other way, are any of them going to end up making a splash? We've talked a lot this week about Justin Ross, and I can understand why, and I know I do have a lot of intrigue in what he is going to be able to do if he is indeed fully healthy, if he is indeed able to go out there, play well against NFL caliber players and play like we haven't seen him play since all the way back in his freshman year at Clemson. But Cornell Powell has been on the team for a few years now. He has not played. He has been a practice squad guy despite being a fifth-round pick. Is he going to do something that makes you think, okay, maybe this is a piece? Nico Remigio, the undrafted rookie from Fresno State, talked about him a lot earlier in the summer, late in the spring. Is he going to be able to do something that maybe makes you think, dang, he could be a player? He was awesome at Fresno State. Great player for the Bulldogs the last couple of years. We've talked about Emir Smith-Marset. Is this going to be an opportunity for him? There are so many guys you can look at and say, you are going to have a very slim chance of making this roster because you can only keep so many guys at each position, and so many guys are already ahead of you. Who is going to step up, make a play, give the Chiefs pause with that wide receiver room, or really with the offensive skill position players in general? If you say we can only keep somewhere in the neighborhood of what would it be? Like 15, no more than 15 players between running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. It's either going to be 14 or 15. Who is going to make us think maybe we need to keep that 15th? Who is going to make us think maybe we need to keep a 16th and go shorter on the offensive line instead? I am just curious who that is going to end up being. I have feelings about who it could be. I don't have, super high expectations for Ty Freifogel, for example, but maybe it does end up being him. I just want to see which of those guys is able to, not to use an extremely overused cliche, but who is going to grab the bull by the horns here?
And not just whether they make plays, but like what kinds of plays are they?
Great
are they
point.
Plays after the catch? Are they contested catch plays? What kind of routes are they running? Where are they lining up? And this isn't just interesting for the fringe roster guys. This is interesting for everybody. This is interesting for Rashee Rice. This is interesting for Sky Moore, for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, for Justin Ross, Richie James, however many snaps those guys get. And again, that will be telling too. Which of those guys are considered the first team guys that don't get any snaps after the Mahomes group comes out of the game, whether that's one drive or two drives in the first quarter? Where do those guys line up? Are they in the slot? Are they on the boundary? What kind of routes are they running? If they make a catch, if they make a play, what route was it? Was it a slant? Was it a deep in? Was it something contested down the sideline? I don't think the Chiefs are going to throw the kitchen sink out in terms of their playbook, certainly. But I think we can learn a little bit about what roles the Chiefs sort of foresee for those guys and what kind of concepts, route concepts, passing play concepts they're going to be most involved in. So I'm looking forward to that as well with this wide receiver group because it is such a deep group and there are a lot of different possibilities, I think, with all of these guys. And the one at the top of the depth chart, we already know isn't going to play in Kadarius Toney. So what does it look like without him? Who are the guys who break the huddle first with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback? And how many of them are there? Are we going to see a lot more two tight end stuff with two wide receivers? How many times do we see 3 wide sets, 4 wide sets? Do we see those early in downs, or is the preference to go with multiple tight ends early in downs? A lot of really interesting things I think will factor as far as what the wide receiver group looks like, how it shakes out. And that starts with the first drive. That'll be the thing. Like, obviously we're not watching the first drive wondering, man, how's that 15 going to come out swinging it this year? I wonder how he's going to look. We know that. But when the starters do play, the thing that will be the most interesting about it is who are the receivers? Where are they standing? Are they in motion? What kind of routes are they running? How do they get involved in the offense? Because there's a lot of different ways you can involve all of these guys.
One of the potential formations or positional alignments we haven't talked a lot about, because we've talked about using 2 tight ends, 11 personnel. If they go with 4 wide, do they use a running back? Do they use the tight end? Assuming you're not including Travis Kelce because he's going to be on the field regardless. I think I'm curious, and I don't know if we'll see this in this game, but sometime this season, a long-term thing to look for. I wonder if the Chiefs at some point try to go 5 wide with 3 receivers and 2 tight ends. I wonder if they like the athleticism of that tight end group enough that they'd be willing to do that. And alternately, and we have no way of knowing if they will do this or not do this, I wonder if that is going to depend on which tight ends end up making the roster too. Like maybe, hey, if we go with Bell and Fortson as tight ends 3 and 4, technically 2 and 3, maybe we're not going to do that. But if you end up with, say, Matt Bushman making the roster and you have 3 wide receivers with tight ends Travis Kelce and Matt Bushman, that's a lot of athleticism in the middle of the field. That's essentially what I would just call them big slots, but now they're being called power slots, big slot receivers, which it almost sounds dirty. But that is essentially what Bushman would be doing in that role. So I'm curious to see if they do some of those even more outside the box kind of alignments.
Because they got to get a lot of looks at those tight ends too.
Yeah.
Like that's a legitimate battle. Matt Bushman is really pushing hard for a roster spot. Andy Reid likes him. He likes those BYU guys.
He does.
And there's a chance that he's going to maybe make a serious run at a roster spot here. And Jody Fortson, I would bet isn't going to play. I don't know if they've announced who's not going to play.
I haven't seen.
Be surprised if Fortson plays, but that opens up even more opportunity for the big kid out of BYU.
The other thing to note, and your point about what kind of plays are guys making, that I think is the perfect encapsulation of why you should not pay attention to preseason stats, especially when you're looking at young guys who are just trying to make the roster, because you only get so many preseason game because you're not going through a normal rotation. You might only play 1 quarter. You might only play the second half when it's all reserves on the other side. So if you have a quarterback who's putting up crazy numbers, great. He wasn't playing against anyone and every one of his throws was a check down. That doesn't mean anything. That means absolutely nothing to me. There have been a bunch of reports this year out of Buccaneers camp that, oh man, Kyle Trask, he's only throwing 1 interception. Baker Mayfield's throwing them all over. Well, if Kyle Trask is only throwing bubble screens every day, then what does that matter? I'd rather have the guy who's pushing the ball. So my point, to circle back around here, is let's say you've got Cornell Powell, just to pick out a random name, and he only ends up with 1 catch for the game. He's got 1 catch for 14 yards. You might say, okay, yeah, this dude, no chance. Don't even bother paying attention to him. But what if that was a complex route? What if he beat his man? What if he won a jump ball against his guy? What if he runs 8 routes and he got genuinely open on 7 of them and Shane Buechele's just not looking for him? What if he is blocking as well? And you say, dang, if we want to have that physical output on the boundary, like the reason why we brought in Juju and MVS last year, maybe Powell is that guy. I'm not saying it will be him, but that's why you can't pay attention to stats in this game. You have to, I sound like such a prick saying this. You got to watch the tape. Like you gotta watch the film. The eye in the sky does not lie with preseason games. The last thing I wanted to get to, one player in particular that I'm very much intrigued by, and we have talked about him a ton, Derrick Prince. That, to me, I think is the single most interesting individual, because I am very ready to just say he's RB3. We know Pacheco is 1. We know McKinnon is 2. I am certainly ready to just say, 1 good game, I have seen enough, get him into that 3rd role, put him there. And I think he can earn that. I also was wondering, while putting together my thoughts for the show, we haven't heard any movement on Clyde Edwards-Helaire going elsewhere, and I doubt he would be cut in the final cut downs. I wonder, when injuries start to roll in as the preseason goes on and as training camp rolls on, I wonder if the Chiefs will dangle him out there. Like, oh, random NFC East team. You lost your second string running back. Throw us a conditional 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
We got a guy for you.
That's exactly what I think you'd expect, I think, in return. Some conditional third-day pick.
Yeah.
Late third-day pick. But I think he'll get a chance to audition for teams looking to make a trade. I think we'll see. I would expect we see quite a bit of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if not Sunday, then in the other 2 preseason games. Does Derrick Prince get any run with the ones? Do they run him out there with the ones at all? That will be fascinating, I think, to see if he gets a snap or two while Mahomes and the number ones are out on the field. He's kind of the name, right? Like every camp, all 32 camps, there's one guy who, nobody else. You ask 31 other NFL cities right now, do you know who Derrick Prince is? And it's going to be a resounding no. But there are also guys flashing in camps that we don't know who they are either. Every city, every team has that guy. And I think for the Chiefs, Derrick Prince is that guy. So obviously a lot of interest in his Chiefs debut.
You know what that sounds a lot like? Isaiah Pacheco 1 year ago.
Oh, 100%.
That sounds exactly like it. Like, hey, this dude is good. You may not have heard much about him because he played for Rutgers and was a 7th-round pick, but pay attention. He's going to do some things. That sounds exactly like what we're talking about with Derrick Prince. Any other final thoughts? Any prediction for Sunday's game?
One series from Mahomes. It's a touchdown drive, and then they get him out of there.
I love the people on the aggregation accounts on Twitter who Andy Reid said the starters are going to play a full quarter coming up in this game. Do you actually watch football? Like, do you actually know anything about the Kansas City Chiefs? If Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce play an entire quarter, I will be shocked. That will be the most shocking thing I see this month if they play a full quarter of the first preseason game. I'm not going to make a prediction because the game doesn't matter. The score doesn't matter. I will say this. It is time for my annual PSA. I will bet on almost anything in sports. I've bet on the NFL, college football, Canadian football, spring football, Australian rules football, baseball. I had a couple bets on the trade deadline that hit, by the way, college basketball, NBA, you name it. I probably have at least tried it. I will not now or ever bet on a preseason game. Please have some respect for yourself. Do not bet on preseason football.
That's growth, Brendan, because when I met you, I remember you placed a bet on the Hall of Fame game.
I did. Yes, indeed, I did.
This is personal growth, and I think we should all celebrate that.
Everybody has a moment where you hit rock bottom and you say, why am I doing this?
I think I remember, like, you were tweeting about it.
I was. And after that, I thought, I can't do this anymore. This is a dark place. I cannot do this anymore. That is coming up on Sunday, Chiefs versus Saints, preseason game number 1. We'll talk about the game coming up here in just a few minutes with Matt Derrick. First things first, though, we've got to get to a break. We'll play Change My Mind after this on 580 Sports Talk. we get to Matt Derrick here on 580 Sports Talk on this Friday afternoon. I'm Brendan. He's Dan. I thought of this last night after C.J. Stroud on his first drive in the preseason threw, admittedly, a horrible interception. It was very bad. But, of course, you get the instant reaction. Oh, he's a bust. Oh, he sucks. Can't believe they spent the second pick on this guy. Yada, yada. Oh, he had that bad S2 test score. He's dumb. Look, you can tell. Stop. Changed my mind. Nothing that any of the first three quarterbacks that got drafted, so nothing that Stroud, Young, Richardson do this preseason should change your perception of them as a rookie and as a future NFL quarterback.
Nothing in the stat line. No, I don't think that's valid. You're not scouting stat lines in the preseason because defenses are working on things. It'd be like scouting a pitcher's stat line in spring training. Like they're just out there getting work in. And if that means that they give up 7 runs in 3 innings while they're just throwing fastballs, then okay, that's what happens. Zach Greinke famously used to talk about, I wanted to work with runners on. I want to get some work in with runners on today. So he was just throwing pus, letting up base runners so he could work on his mechanics and stuff with runners on base. So don't scout the stat line with those guys, but see how many times they make you go, wow. Because remember who made you go, wow, in preseason a lot? Patrick Mahomes. He had that throw off his back leg to DeMarcus Robinson in his rookie year, like on the move.
The, 70-yard in the air throw to Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, that one too. Like, if they're making wow plays, wow throws, that's a lot more significant than what the final stat line says at the end of the game. So there is some importance to it, but certainly not as it pertains to like what the box score says. Yeah. And like the interception that was thrown by C.J. Stroud last night, like, wow, he didn't go through that progression at all. Yeah, that was the whole criticism of him. It was, can he go through the reads quickly enough after being in a one-read offense at Ohio State? I would expect a rookie with that scouting report would struggle with that. Like, that doesn't worry me long-term at all. So, again, my PSAs, do not bet on the preseason. Don't worry about the stats in the preseason. My change my mind is also about the preseason. A lot gets made about whether teams decide to play their first string, particularly when it comes to quarterbacks, but at other positions too. Do they play the first string guys at all? Some veterans don't play, like Aaron Donald hasn't played a preseason game in God knows how long. Yeah. Some teams like to do it. Some teams prefer to sit their starters entirely through the preseason, not risk injury at all. Changed my mind. It literally does not matter if the first string plays or not in the preseason. Generally, more often than not, yes, that is the case. You get so many reps live or simulated or sometimes in joint practices during camp. Most of the time, it does not matter. Now, it is useful, I think, sometimes to have non-sanitized football action to get prepared for the season, but most of the time, it really doesn't make a difference. The lone exception to that is when you've got guys who are starters but have not played a lot of football. Like, I think of the Packers. Like, Jordan Love needs to be out there because Jordan Love needs to play football. He needs to. He's had 83 career passes in 3 years. Sure. Like, he's got to be out there throwing. Bryce Young, he's going to start first-year rookie. You want to see what he can do. But, like, I know Andy Reid would disagree with me. I give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, it's dumb to have Patrick Mahomes even suit up for this game. He doesn't need the ramp up. He doesn't need to throw one pass and hand the ball off twice. Like, it's dumb. It's, in my opinion, useless. Andy's old school. I get that. For guys like that, it doesn't matter. It's a very specific set of teams, I think, that need their starters out there. I think the flip side of it, too, is that sometimes it gets used, like, later on in the season to explain things. Like, it was one of the things that was used to point out what a terrible coach Nathaniel Hackett was, as though there weren't already 50 valid reasons. Right. It was like, he didn't play his starters in the preseason. He didn't get them ready. That's why Russell Wilson's been bad. No, there were like 36 reasons why Russell Wilson stunk last year, and none of them were because he didn't run 2 drives in preseason week 1. Yeah. Like, it really, I don't think matters. Your guys are either ready when the rubber meets the road week 1 or they're not. And whatever you've got to do to get those guys ready, whether it is hold them on the sideline or it is play them, you just have to get them ready. It didn't help him that his coach couldn't tell time. That was maybe the biggest issue, but I don't think the preseason would have helped that out even one bit. Coming up next, Matt Derrick will join us to preview Chiefs Saints this weekend here on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with your money.
Play like that.
His name is Matt.
Are you ready?
My name is Matt.
Let's go.
Let's go to the greater Kansas City area, where we talk to our Chiefs insider, Matt Derrick, publisher of ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on Twitter as well, at Matt Derrick, and head to Chiefs Digest for all the best coverage of everything going on at Chiefs Camp. Matt joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. Matt, are you ready for some football?
I think we are ready for some football. I mean, if we're not, we're going to get it anyway. So let's see what happens.
Biggest things that stood out to you in this last week of camp before we get to the opening preseason game?
Yeah. I was going to say things are pretty much like clockwork for this team and everything, but I thought today was kind of sloppy. That was probably to be expected because they had the day off on Thursday, and then they're literally coming back for just one day on Friday. It was a quick 10-10-10 practice that runs about 75 minutes. So maybe should have expected that to be a little sloppy. Maybe Andy wanted to be a little sloppy so he could have some things to criticize, because there honestly hasn't been a lot to criticize. I think for the most part, this has been one of the most predictable and just orderly camps that we've seen in a while. Not a lot of injuries. Everything's kind of come to form. I don't think that there's been anybody who's really performed badly. Mahomes has looked good. I mean, the only thing you could really say about this team is it's missing Chris Jones, but that's about it. Everything else has gone, I think, just about as well as it possibly could for this team.
Well, we might as well get to the all-pro elephant in the room right now. Chris Jones, still not at camp. It is going to run him up well over $1 million if he does not return soon in the next few days. I assume he's not going to be back by Sunday's preseason opener. What is the vibe at camp right now regarding the Jones situation? Is it for the most part still, hey, it's business as usual, when he's here, or are there starting to be some more feelings of, hey, what's going on here from both sides?
Yeah, and then I got a chance to talk to Brett Veach the other day about it, and and my first question specifically about Chris Jones was, are you surprised that you're at this point? I mean, at that point it was 19 days in. Now we're at 21, but it was like, are you surprised that Chris isn't here and that you are 19 days into this holdout? And he kind of, took a deep breath before, and thought about it for a little bit, and then, and went into talking about how he sees both sides of it. Obviously he sees his own side about wanting to get Chris Jones signed and wanting to get this done. He also understands the player side of it. And he says, hey, not much more in this job after all these, being in this job for 6 years surprises him anymore. But I think at the same time, it's, what he's kind of saying is that it does still surprise him. I mean, they thought that Chris would be there at some point. I don't think anybody thought that this situation would be where it is right now, where it's still not resolved. And yeah, I mean, even though Brett says he's cautiously optimistic that something will still get done, there's at the same time is that fear that, that things are going to come to a head soon, that they're going to reach a point. And I really feel like coming back after the preseason game is a big point. Even though the preseason game itself, hey, that's a one game paycheck fine that he would be facing. Even though you've got that, you get to August 15th and you're really at that point talking about, being 3 weeks away from the season opener. And that's a big deal. I mean, you're talking about, if Chris comes in and needs a 5-day acclimation period. So, you're really getting to the point now where you're talking about maybe 16 days before a game of trying to get ready. And I think that's not a lot of time. You're talking about not a lot of time to get him on the field and get up to game speed, because working on your own in Florida, no matter how great a shape he is, and I assume that Chris Jones, he's in good shape, it's not game shape. And you just worry that you're getting ready to cross a threshold where the Chiefs are going to be worried about, getting him ready and making sure that he doesn't get hurt and that he's part of the game plan and he's up to speed, and making sure that he can actually be Chris Jones. And at that point, the conversations go south. I think there's a line out there. When that exact date is, I don't know. Like I said, to me, next week, I think, is that day, but we will see. As far as everything else goes, I mean, hey, players aren't talking about it a whole lot because, once again, it's money, and they don't really talk about it. Everybody's saying the right things, but once again, you get the feeling that sometime soon that could change.
Matt Derrick is our guest, our Chiefs insider, the publisher of ChiefsDigest.com, joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline, as he does every Friday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. If you had to guess, Matt, how is this all playing in the locker room? Because I have to imagine that what we know is that players root for other players to get paid and get excited when other guys get the big bag. But at the same time, there is, I'm sure, a bit of a hurry up sort of feeling with some of the players. And Patrick Mahomes has at the very least vocalized, like, I want him here. I want him to be here in camp. Do you think this is maybe going over well? And if you had to guess, again, I'm putting you maybe in a weird spot to guess, but do you think there might be some frustration towards either party in the locker room that this isn't done yet?
I mean, I do wonder about it because, like we were saying, everybody says the right things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they believe the right things, and they aren't maybe talking about things differently in the locker room. And I do fairly, convinced that the guys are probably, when it does come to that they probably still are unified as far as saying, okay, they want Chris to get paid. And depending on how the money comes out, I mean, maybe they'll feel differently. I mean, Chris, all of a sudden, is making $32 million, they'll be like, well, okay, I guess that's what he was doing. I don't think it's going to be that way, but you do wonder if, some of the guys may have different thoughts and their effect, and frankly, think about how it might affect them, because this team is trying to run it back. They know they have a much less chance of doing that without Chris Jones. There might be some guys on this team who are thinking, wait a minute, this might be my only chance to win a Super Bowl, and this guy is hurting that chance. There might be some guys on this team because, I talked with Brett Veach about this too. There's some guys that would like to get contract extensions, maybe, and try and stay with this team. That can't be done right now unless Chris Jones' contract. So he might be costing some other guys money. And if that comes into play, yeah, I mean, I could see it turning. Like I said, I get the sense that everybody is saying the right things out loud right now. I do think that that could change. And I mean, I don't know about those guys. I know in my place, if I think I was Patrick Mahomes, I think I'd be calling Chris Jones and saying, "Hey, I left some money on the table for you, man. Take it. We need you here."
Let's talk about the game, the first preseason game coming up on Sunday. The Chiefs open up the 2013 preseason or 2023 preseason portion of their schedule against the New Orleans Saints. We don't want to go back to 2013. I think if you're a Chiefs fan, particularly, you would much rather not do that. Chiefs Saints. In that game on Sunday, what is the thing that is of greatest interest to you? The thing that you will be watching with the closest, the thing that you are the most interested in watching develop over those first 60 minutes?
Yeah, in the first quarter, it's really just watching the first team offense. I want to see Mahomes and what he manages to do with a couple of the receivers. I mean, he's probably not going to play him much. We might even see Blaine Gabbert for a series with the ones. Who knows? But that's the most that those starters will play that first period. I would, like to see his connection with the receivers, especially Sky Moore. See if things look a little bit more advanced with Marquez. See the rookie Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, get Richie James, all those guys. I mean, do you like to see just how the timing is? One thing in practice, it's another thing at game speed. So one thing for sure. Also, the two tackles, everything looked great with Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor. Definitely want to see them against another opponent that's different. So would like to see how they're holding up. After that, a big part of it is just going to be rookies and special teams. Derrick Prince is probably the big one as the kick returner. See how he's performing. If he has a good performance, no loose balls, no fumbles, no mistakes, he's probably your kick returner starting the season. He just needs to prove that he can do it in a game. And then the rest of the group too. I mean, Justin Ross, this is going to be his first game in 21 months. Need to see how he does. Guys like Echo Boydo, if they're going to make this team, this is the last test they got to pass. They got to go out and show that they can do it when the lights are on, when everybody's running around at full speed. Once again, training camp and practice is one thing. Doing it in a game is something else. So those are the things I'll be watching on Sunday.
Chatting with Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider from ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and of course, all of his work over at ChiefsDigest.com. He joins us here on this Feel Good Friday afternoon on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, who is another specific player, maybe a guy we haven't heard a whole lot about, who you are excited to see take the field in some real competition?
Yeah, there's a couple of them, but I mean, Matt Bushman, the tight end, is probably at the top of the list. Last year it looked like he was really making a bid to maybe burst the bubble and make the roster. He had those 2 touchdown catches and then immediately broke his clavicle and basically misses the rest of the year. He's once again had a really good camp and just seems to catch everything that goes his direction. So I'm really impressed to see what he can do. If he can pick up where he left off in last year's preseason and back that performance up again, I think you need to give him some serious thought, especially with Jody Fortson being out. I mean, what are you going to do in that tight end room? I mean, there's some choices to be made, and I think he could really force their hand about maybe trying to squeeze him onto the roster. That's where the difficult decisions are going to be for this team. It's going to be, who's going to be the final wide receiver, the final tight end, the final corner, the final safety. And, I mean, those guys might be just butting up against each other, as far as securing one of those last couple of spots. So I'll be interested to see how those guys do. Nick Jones, Echo Boydo, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, those are really interesting cases. I want to see Chamari Connor in a game. I mean, so I'll be paying a lot of attention in the second and third quarters, mostly to those rookies to see how they're doing.
The running backs room, I think, is extremely interesting. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco, he is RB1 going into the year. We know what Jerick McKinnon's role is. Derrick Prince, it sounds like, has had a great camp so far. We know he's got the speed. That was a big-time undrafted free agent pickup. Then you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who feels like he's on kind of tenuous ground with the Chiefs. There hasn't been any word recently about him maybe being moved. I assume he's not going to get cut. Maybe he's a trade candidate if someone gets hurt around the league. How do you see that room shaking out, and what are the important things to keep an eye on with the running backs coming up on Sunday?
Yeah, Clyde is so interesting because I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day, and it's just like, do you ever remember a running back that the Chiefs, were either counting on or not counting on getting this much time and this much featuring in training camp? and not making the team. And we couldn't think of one, because normally when guys have disappeared, like Ronald Jones or C.J. Spiller, you've seen it coming because they weren't getting the reps in training camp, and that spilled over to the regular season. In this case, I mean, Clyde has been getting the work, especially with Pacheco out. Clyde has been getting a ton of work, especially as the number one guy. And you certainly look at the way that the Chiefs have run their offense the last few years. I mean, it's been since Kareem Hunt in 2017 that they've had a running back go through the entire season. And yeah, they've got McKinnon, but after that, are you talking about, and Pacheco with the injuries, it hasn't taken off the yellow contact jersey yet. Then you're talking about Derrick Prince and having never played in an NFL game. Now, if Prince goes out and has a great training camp, maybe you do feel like Clyde's expendable, and what you're doing right now is featuring him and trying to get him some good tape, and maybe you can make a trade. But with the running back position as valued as it is, I'm not sure you get a huge return. I still get the feeling that the Chiefs are figuring that they're going to need Clyde at some point in this season, because they've been preparing him that way. And I think they're going to, unless they make a trade of some sort, I think they're going to keep 4 running backs, because I think they feel like they're going to need them at some point.
We'll get you out of here on this one, Matt. I know coming up later on in the preseason, later on in camp, you will put out your full roster prediction over at ChiefsDigest.com. But off the top of your head, looking specifically at the quote-unquote skill positions, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, if you had to guess, how many of each do you think the Chiefs are going to end up keeping on the final roster?
Well, my most recent one that I did not feel good about. It was hard. Getting down from 54 to 53 was super hard. And the last one actually was deciding to leave Blake Bell off of it for just 3 tight ends. But I wasn't convinced that was necessarily a permanent thing. I do think they'll keep 4 running backs. I think they, unless there's an injury of some sort, they're going to have to keep 7 receivers. I think those guys are going to force them to keep 7 receivers. Probably 3 quarterbacks as well. I mean, you don't want to lose Shane Buechele, and you want to take advantage of the new emergency quarterback rule. You got to keep 3 on the 53. The tight end group, I'm sure they want to keep 4 for the way that they use tight ends. And then it's the question of, can you keep 4 active on game day? The only thing about Blake's contract is that he has probably the most friendly team contract, in that they can release him and sign him back with no penalty. And we've seen that when they needed to put a guy on injured reserve or, buy a roster spot for a day or two, those are the guys they look for. So maybe Blake Bell into that category. I'm still convinced, and my final 53, I'm sure we'll have 4 tight ends on it. But at that point, that means you're sacrificing a position elsewhere, and that might be on the defensive side. It could be, maybe it's offensive line, but at some point, if you're going to carry 7 receivers, 4 tight ends, 4 running backs, 3 quarterbacks, it's hard to do that and not have it come from the defensive side.
Nobody covers the Chiefs better than Matt Derrick does. You can find all of his work at ChiefsDigest.com. You can and should go follow him on Twitter as well, at Matt Derrick. And he joins us at this time every single Friday for our Chiefs Insider on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, enjoy the preseason opener on Sunday, and we will talk to you next week, hopefully with some fun stuff to chat about from this game.
Always does that. Sounds fun, guys. Take care, everybody.
That is the best of the best. It's Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. Let's get to a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little college football to lead off the 4 o'clock hour. Little KU and K-State right here on 580 Sports Talk.
Blue Stem
this Feel Good Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Welcome back in. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are here with you until 6 o'clock today. Then a little overtime. And then we've got Royals baseball coming up tonight. 7:10 first pitch, 6:30 pregame on the Royals Radio Network here on 580 WIBW. The first of a 2-game series with the St. Louis Cardinals. And let me be the first to tell you, this is stupid as hell. This is so dumb. You're playing a 2-game weekend series Friday and Saturday?
You're not playing Sunday?
Give me a break.
What is a Sunday afternoon in the summer without a ball game?
Well, it is a Chiefs preseason game.
Yes.
It's so dumb, man. At least I think this is the last really dumb part of the Royals schedule.
Yeah, they've had a weird schedule, and this ended up being a really strange one. But they had the 2022 schedule or 2023 schedule. They had it done like middle of last year, because we already know the 2024 dates.
Right.
How did they leave this Sunday open? How did this Sunday end up being an open date?
I don't know. I really don't know, but it's dumb.
It's
very dumb.
Certainly, I guess it had to be because of the Chiefs, but
I guess I don't know, man. I really don't know. If you're going to play a 2-game series, which everybody does with the interleague,
play in the middle of the week.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes.
Off on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or hell, Monday, Tuesday, and off Wednesday even would make more sense than not playing a game on a Sunday. Just very, very dumb. Whoever made the schedule, I think you're dumb. Or at least I think your thought process was dumb. So take that, I guess. We're going to talk a little college football coming up here in just a moment. A little KU and K-State. Most important non-quarterback for each side. We've got our final What Is Wrong With You of the week coming up as well. Brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. And we have our NFL positional group rankings. They come from Mike Clay of ESPN. He ranked every team 1 through 32 for every position group. And the usual suspects are number 1 for the Chiefs, but a couple positions are really low too. And there's at least a couple that I disagree with here. So we'll get to that coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're still taking your texts. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Check us out on YouTube as well. Our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Thank you to everyone who continues to subscribe. Have gotten a few new ones since I've been back, so I don't feel quite as bad now. I've gotten a few more since I have returned to the studio this week. Just go to youtube.com, search Sports on 580. That's all you have to search. Will be the number 1 result. Make sure you subscribe to us there, and then you can go watch the live stream. You can watch our old videos. You can watch our send-off to Fulton at the end of Mic'd Up from today. And, of course, you can participate in the comment section live as well.
Speaking of Fulton, would you believe he's got something like an answer for us regarding the schedule?
Oh,
the Royal schedule. Apparently, the way they scheduled the Cardinals-Royals games, and Fulton texted us to tell us this, it had to do with St. Louis wanted Memorial Day at home, and so they got the Monday-Tuesday series at the end of May. And they played the Memorial Day home game. That was the one Mike Mayers almost no-hit the Cardinals.
yeah, that's right.
That was that game. I remember that because I was shopping for bathroom supplies that day. I remember Memorial Day fondly. So I guess that's why then they're doing it now at this time of year, but it doesn't fully explain, as Fulton is quick to know, why exactly it's Friday, Saturday.
I appreciate the insight. It's still dumb.
Yeah. Just play it Monday, Tuesday. What the hell?
I don't know.
So odd.
It's the Royals. They didn't care. Although it's also the Cardinals. You'd think they would have done something nice for the Cardinals since they've been a pretty successful franchise over time. But then again, if Cardinals fans are upset, then I guess I'll change my mind and I'll take it. And I'll be content with it. You posed the question to me today. Who is the most important non-quarterback player? So it's got to be a player, because the answers would be Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold, and okay, let's move on. The most important non-quarterback player for both KU and for K-State. Let's start with K-State here, because, again, I mean, if you're including the quarterback, it's going to be Will Howard. I think this is a fascinating question, though, and I think you can look at this from both an offensive and defensive perspective, because you've got studs who are on both sides of the ball. I look at either one of the running backs, probably Treshaun Ward, because we know K-State is going to keep the ball on the ground plenty. I think you could talk about really any number of starting offensive linemen. Defensively, I think you could make an argument for Khalid Duke, because we know he's got first 2 days of the NFL draft kind of talent. I just don't. Can you trust that he can stay on the field? You could talk about someone on the back end of the defense. Deuce Green is one of the best linebackers in the league. I think you can go one of any directions when talking about K-State. This is a hard question, though. I'm not sure exactly where I would go, but I kind of think I might lean with Duke. But then I hedge that and say, but they've got a bunch of other dudes who, even if Duke is not out there, I think they're going to be big contributors this year. I look at Mott, I look at Matlack, and think if those guys played to the degree we think they can play, their defensive line is going to be good regardless.
Yeah, they've got really good cover, I think, at defensive end, at rush end, and even acknowledging and agreeing with you as I do that Khalid Duke has the highest ceiling of any of those guys. I think they're going to get production from that spot one way or another. The position on defense that I think is most fascinating is the secondary. And you've got Kobe Savage, who obviously is getting a lot of preseason attention, and he was at Big 12 Media Days and bouncing back from an injury, a tough injury, ACL. I mean, it's not just, he tore a hamstring or something. The ACL went. And by all accounts, he's looked great in practice and going to be ready to rock and roll for week 1. That's a tough one to come back from. But you have his experience, you have his leadership, and you don't have a ton of K-State experience at the other spots in the defensive backfield. You don't have guys who played a ton of games at K-State. Now, this has not been an issue for the secondary the last couple of years. I feel like we've had similar conversations going into the last 2 Kansas State seasons about, oh man, they got to put it together in the secondary. They don't have a lot back, and they got a bunch of transfers. And then those transfers ended up being really good. Like Julius Brents was a stud. Reggie Stubblefield was a really good player. A lot of guys who've come in, like Kobe Savage last year, he's a JUCO transfer and ended up being ready for prime time right away. So there are some new faces on that back end that I think, given Kansas State's track record, have a chance to be impactful right away. And I think the guy most likely and maybe most necessary is Savage's partner in crime, if you will, in that back end at the safety spot. It's Marcus Siegel, the safety out of North Dakota State. And he's come in, and not only is he at a new school, he's in a new position. He played corner at NDSU. Chris Kleiman talked about him at length in his first preseason press conference earlier this week, talking about how much leadership he's already brought to the position because he is an experienced college player. And the fact that he's been able to learn this new position on the fly to the point where he is, again, he's the likely starter back there with Savage, and then VJ Payne kind of factoring in as what they call the jack safety, that third safety in the 3-3-5 they play, the big nickel, if you want to call it that. I think that Siegel's fascinated because of the position switch, because new to the program, but surely there's an understanding of the expectations of the program because he's an NDSU guy. He's got some familiarity, at least, with Chris Kleiman. And it has been really important for Kansas State to be solid on the back end, and they have been solid even without the kind of continuity always that you would like at those safety spots. So Marcus Siegel is the guy I pinpoint on the defensive side of the ball for K-State and think this is a really important cog, and somebody that if he has a really good year, that probably bodes really, really well for this Kansas State defense.
We've got a couple of answers here in the YouTube comments. Barbara says she's going with Kobe Savage. Vance says, I think RJ Garcia is going to be more of a factor than many people expect. I think I'm going to lean with Kobe Savage as well. And the reason why is that having someone who has been through all the battles, who you can trust, who is as gifted as he is going to be especially important this year because you are going to have more new faces in that secondary. You lost 2 draft picks. You lost 2, or they would have been top, I don't remember what number Josh Hayes got picked in the 5th round, but you lost 2 NFL players out of that secondary. Really 3, because you got to take Echo Boydo out of there as well. Because, again, he's at least in camp with the Chiefs, and I think he's going to end up making that roster. So you lost 3 NFL guys from that cornerback spot. And I know Savage is a safety, but you've got to have somebody out there who can keep everything in order. You've got to have somebody out there who you know is a playmaker, a ball hawk, however you want to say it. I'm not saying that, RJ Garcia or, Keenan Garber or any of these other guys aren't going to be those at the corner spots. But I think having someone you can trust on that back end where you've got the most turnover, because at linebacker, you've got consistency, and arguably the best player on the defense is back at his inside linebacker spot in Deuce Screen. Up front, even if Duke's hurt, as we've gone over, you've got enough dudes up there. Even if you're a little thin at defensive tackle, you've got enough guys off the edge. I think you're going to have just a fine year no matter what. But having a guy on the back end is so important. Again, everything stays in order. You can trust that he's going to make plays. You can trust that he can do the right thing. It makes me think, and I'm not trying to compare players here, but an NFL comparison, I think of, a Brian Dawkins. I think of an Ed Reed. And again, not in terms of style of play, but in terms of those guys were safeties who were the playmaker in that secondary. And nowadays in the NFL, especially, it's the corners you think of as the playmakers more than safeties. But I think Savage has the opportunity to be in that kind of role as the trustworthy veteran presence who, hey, we need someone to step up. We need someone to figure it out. We're getting gashed. Who's going to figure it out? Who's going to step up and make a play? I think that's going to be Kobe Savage.
We had another nod from the text line. Again, you can text us on the text line, 785-272-9429. We had a vote for the wideout room from the 785, saying somebody's got to step up from that group. I know Vance in the YouTube comments mentioned RJ Garcia, who caught a big touchdown in the Big 12 championship game. Keegan Johnson, coming from Iowa, I think has a chance to be that guy. If I had to guess right now, like Phillip Brooks is wide receiver 1, and Ben Sinnott obviously is in line for a huge year at tight end. But if I had to guess who's going to be next in line for targets, I think it's probably going to be Keegan Johnson or RJ Garcia, one of those two. But certainly agree with that point from the texter that somebody does have to step forward and be that second or third reliable pass catcher. Because, again, we don't know who the reliable pass catcher out of the backfield is going to be. We've heard great things about Treshaun Ward's ability in that mix, but Deuce Vaughn because – and that's yes, that's not a knock on Treshaun Ward. That's just saying Deuce Vaughn was special, extra special. So those reliable targets are going to be important for Will Howard this coming season. Also got a nod from the 402 for DJ Giddens. Says, I think DJ Giddens will do well. I do think that like the shiny thing, which is Treshaun Ward, because he's new, preseason newcomer of the year, sometimes that distracts from some things that are already like solidly built, solid foundation pieces. I think it's good that K-State doesn't have to lean on DJ Giddens, but I think they could if they had to, if it came to that, because I think he showed that capability, that talent last season in spelling Deuce Vaughn, which he wasn't called on much to do, because why would you spell Deuce Vaughn unless you absolutely had to? But you can go with a little bit of more of a 1-2 punch this year and even out the carries a little bit, and that may benefit the offense.
And I do think, too, and we saw this in the Sugar Bowl, in fact, you can use DJ Giddens as a pass catcher. Now, I don't think he's the type of receiver that Deuce Vaughn is. I don't think he's that type. I mean, he's obviously not that type of player. I don't know if he has that kind of receiving skills, but he's not a complete negative in the passing game either. You can use him in space. I know he's bigger, and with Deuce, he was kind of thought of, it's kind of the thunder and lightning thing, right? He's more than that. And I know we've had other people who have reached out and said, hey, we're really excited about him. Obviously, he's a more local kid, too. That means a lot. But I do think he is going to be, if not a true bell cow for this team, I think there are going to be games where he is the running back hot hand, and he is going to end up being more useful, either because they need more of a power game or just because he's playing really well and he ends up getting a bunch of the touches.
Another vote for Garcia, by the way, as well, from the text line. Again, 785-272-9429. Texter from 785 chimes in with Garcia as well. Look, it was not a mistake that even though he didn't feature a lot last year in the passing game because he had Malik Knowles and Cade Warner and Phillip Brooks ahead of him on the depth chart, but we heard RJ Garcia's name in camp. We heard it throughout the year whenever Chris Kleiman would talk about that receiver group. And when his number was called, he made that big play that caught that crucial touchdown in the Big 12 championship game. So certainly there's another level, I think, for RJ Garcia to get to. And he could definitely be an under the radar name this year.
On the KU side, most important player outside of Jalen Daniels. Again, I think there are so many different ways that you could view this and so many different rationales you could give. The offense is going to be the premier side of the ball for KU. I don't think anyone is ever going to dispute that when you look at this team. Do you go with who I think is probably the second best overall player on the offense. That's Devin Neal. That's the Lawrence product, who you heard him talk about that at Media Day, that, hey, a big year this year might mean he's not coming back as a senior because he's going to go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He's that kind of player. And with help around him, if he can stay a little bit healthier, he might be in for an all Big 12 first team kind of season. You can look at some of the pass catchers who really stepped up last year. Can they do the same this year? You look at Grimm, you look at Wilson, you look at Quentin Skinner, number of guys out there who could perform. I love the KU tight ends group. I think the offensive line is going to be good. The defense, that's the worry, right? We've talked about that. Michael Swain has talked to us about that. That is the worry. Can the defense be okay? Kobe Bryant is a first-team all-league kind of guy. Can he be a shutdown corner instead of just a playmaker this year? Because I do think there are two different things, and I think the former maybe affects winning on a more consistent basis than the latter, not that either is bad. The linebackers got to figure something out. The defensive line, who is going to step up and be the guy who can get after the quarterback? Who is that going to end up being? I don't know that there's enough star power in either of those spots to be the answer to this question, but I kind of think I'm going to have to go with an offensive player here because that is where KU's bread is buttered this season. And if we know Jalen Daniels is the franchise, like I would argue more than Will Howard is for K-State.
Oh, absolutely.
Jalen Daniels is the thing that makes it go
100%.
for KU. And I like Jason Bean. I like Jason Bean a lot.
Yeah, he's as good a backup quarterback as there is in the country, but he's also a backup quarterback. And it didn't look the same. Like, he made some plays, but it was not the same KU team with him running the show.
And if you go back to end of season, second team all Big 12, or if you look at preseason Big 12 player of the year, there were some discussions like, hey, Jason Bean put up numbers in this offense. What makes Jalen Daniels so special? Look at the record.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They both put up numbers. You're right. Look at the record. And you can say, yeah, but the schedule got harder. KU is certainly more competitive in some of those games if Jalen Daniels is out there for all of them. Again, not a slight at Jason Bean. He's a great athlete. Daniels is the one who stirs the drink. I think I'm going to lean with Devin Neal here, though, because that running game is so important, that wide zone game. Honestly, I might make my second option. I'd probably go Dominic Pooney, who's going to start at left tackle this year in all likelihood for KU, because that line needs to be a little bit better against the run. But Neal is so talented. You could argue the best running back in the Big 12, maybe not unanimously, but I think you could argue it for sure. And getting that offensive attack to be multifaceted is so important for this team. So it's not just, a true pro-style drop-back game, so to speak, because I don't think that's where Daniels finds his most success. I think it's when you've got multiple options, you can use that RPO game to success. I think you need Neal to go off. I think you can make an argument for a bunch of different guys, but if he wants to hit his career goals, and I think he can, he's got to have a big season. And for KU to be the best version of itself, it needs its best playmaker to be at his best.
So I wrote down two names, both on the defensive side of the ball,
okay,
and they're both edge rushers, Jeremy Robinson and Dylan Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas loses Lonnie Phelps, obviously, and for stretches of last season, he was the only guy that could get to the quarterback. The thing that Kansas is going to have to do, because they are going to be a machine on offense. They're going to score some points. Mm-hmm. Daniels is great. Neal is great. Sounds like full steam ahead for Daniel Highshaw. I think he's important as well. They've got a really underrated wide receiver room. I like their offensive line. They're in a better spot with the offensive line than they've been in God knows how long.
Yeah.
That offense is going to score some points. The defense just needs to give them a chance. They need to get off the field on third downs. They need to be able to get off the field on third and long. And the way you do that is with a pass rush. Your best pass rusher graduated. Who's going to step up? Who's going to fill that role? The two guys for me, Jeremy Robinson is probably the best returning pass rusher on this roster. Mm-hmm. And then the coaching staff went and hit the portal hard and went and got a bunch of guys. And Dylan Brooks probably has the best pedigree of any of the transfers. A four-star previously played at Auburn. Somebody has to be the guy who steps up and says, okay, third down, I'm putting heat on Quinn Ewers, or I'm putting heat on, I don't even remember if Kansas plays Texas. Do they not play Texas? Or do they play Texas?
I got to look at the schedule. I don't think Texas is on the schedule this year. That's wrong. They will play in Austin September 30th.
But you get the idea. Like,
right.
I have to go get after the quarterback. I have to get after Will Howard. Mm-hmm. I have to make sure that we give the offense another chance. The more the offense is on the field, the better this season is going to look for the Kansas Jayhawks. And so the defense just has to They don't have to be perfect. I'm not saying they got to be, like 0-1 Miami good or anything like that. They just have to get a handful of stops each game, and that's going to stem from the pass rush. But they need a pass rusher. They need a primary pass rushing threat. Who's that going to be? I think it's either going to be Robinson or, of the newcomers, Brooks is the most likely for me.
Brooks is a fascinating case for me because the reports that have come in, and Michael has written about this, some other folks who cover the KU program have written about this, that right now he is not running with the ones because he's viewed more as his ceiling as high as anyone has had at KU in a long time. Dorrance Armstrong, like legit NFL player kind of caliber. It's just going to be a little bit of a process to get there. So he's the player that for me has pretty much nothing to lose this year because if he doesn't play a lot, well, that's fine. If he turns out to be that good right away, it changes the defense completely. 100% changes it. So I think he's got the most to gain while simultaneously having almost nothing to lose. The defensive line player that I think I don't know if I would answer him for this question, but I think it is a way to make up for what is perceived as a lack of edge presence. Devin Phillips, you mentioned KU hitting the portal hard. Devin Phillips is a transfer from Colorado State. And from what I have heard, and I'm not at practice every day, so I can't tell you for certain, but from what I have heard, he's different. That is the one guy that KU has on the defensive line at either an interior or edge spot that he just moves differently than everyone else. You cannot get through a Big 12 season without an edge rush. You cannot do it. But if you at least have somebody up there on the interior who is going to make things more difficult, that is going to help quite a bit. Now, it is unfortunate that the Big 12 has a bunch of dudes who can move in the pocket, so that makes it a little more difficult when guys can roll out left or right. But that would probably be my answer if I was going with someone on the defensive line, just because right now he's the most grown man of the group, which I don't say that to insult anyone else, but just in terms of experience on the field, body type, athleticism, physicality, I think that's what he really brings to the table.
Him and Gage Keys is another guy that they brought in on the interior that I think are going to be really important. They're going to need pluggers. They're going to need somebody to move somebody around and give you a chance to get to third. You can't get to third and long typically if you're not also in second and long. Mm-hmm. And you can't get in second and long if you're giving up 5, 6, 7 yards a carry on first down. So those interior guys are pretty important as well. Trench play is going to be, I think that's the difference between Kansas going 6-6 and going back to the Liberty Bowl to maybe Kansas sneaking up in that 7-8 win range.
Vance chimes in on YouTube, and I think he's spot on. Whoever has to fill the shoes of Lonnie Phelps is the primary concern on the defensive side. No doubt about that. I mean, it's kind of amazing that every piece of analysis of KU this offseason has pretty much been the same. The offense is going to be awesome. Can they make a tackle in the second level and ever hit the quarterback?
Can they be anything other than a speed bump on that side of the ball?
And if they can be, I think it can be a really good year.
I do too.
You got to find those guys, though. Let's get to a break. We'll still take your thoughts. Most important non-QB for both KU and K-State. Hit us up either in the YouTube comments or on the text line, 785-272-9429. Let's get to what is wrong with you. That's coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell?
Quickly, before we get to what is wrong with you, if you are interested in watching a former Kansas State Wildcat in action in a little preseason football tonight, Cameron Wolf of the NFL Network reporting Tua Tagovailoa is not going to play any snaps for the Dolphins, so expect a heavy dose of Skylar Thompson in the game for the Dolphins against the Falcons in preseason play coming up tonight. That game is not on national TV, but if you have NFL Plus, you can watch it, and also there are places you can go on the internet to find that. I will not tell you where. You can probably find out where. With that, time for What Is Wrong With You, our final What Is Wrong With You of the week here on 580 Sports Talk, which is always brought to you by our good friends at Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves your time, your money, and your material. So never settle when it comes to metal with Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our winner for the week, it has run the rack so far, the meth-fueled self-baptism. You know the story by this point. A guy was robbing a church, was taking their money, literally took their bag of money from the church. And on his way out, decided to baptize himself. And that's when the police showed up. And then the dog also baptized itself and had a little drink from the baptismal font.
So we can assume it's not like one of the like the bird bath style ones.
Probably not.
A better way to put it. That's probably a terrible way to put it. But like the on a pedestal,
right.
like a round tub.
Yeah.
Probably like one of the fuller fountains, like in the Gemstones Church on the Righteous Gemstones.
Yeah.
Where they baptized BJ.
Yeah.
In one of those.
What a great scene. Perfect show.
It is so good.
And by the way, he was on meth.
Yeah.
Forgot
that part.
Important note here. My story actually occurred back in June, but the perpetrator here was just charged this week. Video appears to show a moment in which the reigning Miss Scotland, yes, the Miss World Scotland, was allegedly ejected from a rugby event while intoxicated after having bitten and racially abused a colleague. The clip, which was filmed by a spectator at this rugby match, allegedly shows security staff attempting to escort Lucy Sophia Thompson off-site at the Edinburgh City Sevens tournament on a late June Saturday. A blonde woman in a cream shorts suit is seen apparently tussling with security staff on the Peffermill playing fields, which is where the rugby matches took place. Everything has a great name in the UK.
True.
The videographer claimed that he recognized the apparently drunk woman as the 24-year-old Miss Thompson after he saw her at school earlier in the day. Another spectator allegedly saw the woman being dragged off and heard her shout, "Do you know who I am? I'm Miss Scotland." Miss Thompson, who is from Dunfermline, is the founder and owner of the Scottish Fashion Association and was crowned Miss Scotland in July of last year. She has since made her Instagram private, by the way. This comes from the Daily Mail, so that line's not surprising. By the way, a little further research into the Scottish Fashion Association tells you that some of the things they deal with are addressing sexism, gender inequality, and racism in the fashion industry.
Of course.
By the way, you can probably guess what she said. The spectator who filmed the footage told the Daily Record newspaper, "I recognized her from school. We had clocked her earlier in the day. We knew that she was there." He added, "A lot of people saw it and filmed it. You couldn't not see it happening. She's meant to be an ambassador for Scotland. If this was just some other person, nobody would care. But in that context, it's different." Another source told The Sun that Miss Thompson told security she was, quote, Miss Scotland, and then added, "My dad has loads of money." Since the arrest, there have also been allegations of racism that have surfaced on social media, with one post saying, "This person violently, racially, and physically attacked our friend in public whilst he was at work," and claimed that she used
the hard R.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. Dang. That tough moment for the Scottish Fashion Association.
Yeah, not great. We need to work on that mission statement.
I love that exists.
Right?
Do we have fashion associations in every country? Is that a thing that
I don't know.
United States Fashion Association? There's the United States Polo Association. I've got a few of their shirts.
Yeah. Let's see. They have the United States Fashion Industry Association, which doesn't appear to deal with sexism or racism. They just represent retailers and wholesalers.
Scottish Fashion Association sounds like the name of a band that would open for like the National.
Yeah. Yeah. They like slow down ska music and cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, would be remiss if I did not literally tip the cap to Vance, who points out on the YouTube comments that Lucy has some splaining to do.
Lucy! That's a good one, Vance.
Really good line. For my story, we are staying in the States. We're going to another place where the accents can sometimes be intelligible. We're going to Alabama.
Nope.
2 people were arrested near the Limestone Correctional Facility for trespassing late Wednesday night. According to the Alabama Department of Corrections, a vehicle was reported near Nick Davis Road. When officials responded, the vehicle fled the scene and started a pursuit, which ended in a nearby neighborhood cul-de-sac. The 2 individuals, now identified as Alvin Andrews and Ladarius McDade, were arrested. According to officials, McDade had been released from Bullock Correctional Facility in February. Doing a search of the pursuit path, agents located a blue duffel bag and a T-shirt cannon.
Hell yeah.
The bag contained 2 cylinder-shaped packages wrapped in black tape, a night vision monocular, and an extra CO2 cartridge. Both individuals were transported to the Limestone County Detention Center, where they were both charged with promoting prison contraband, trespassing about prisons, and attempting to elude. They were going to fire contraband over the walls of this prison using a T-shirt cannon.
So, question. Is this contraband in the sense that you just can't have anything from the outside in prison? Or was this drugs?
That is a frustrating omission
Yeah.
from this story. We don't know the exact nature of the contraband, what was in the packages, the cylinder shaped packages that were wrapped in black tape. And that is deeply disappointing, because I would love to know, maybe they were shooting drugs over the top, or maybe it was just like cigarettes or something else.
Or a T-shirt.
Yeah, maybe it was actually a T-shirt. Maybe, some fresh gear on the cell block.
Maybe dude just really wanted his Hawkwind T-shirt.
Put your hands up. Everybody get your hands up if you want a T-shirt. Make some noise if you want some contraband.
What was the name of this place? It's time for the Limestone County Detention Center T-shirt cannon.
Man, people...
Did they also find a mascot head?
I know, right? People love the T-shirt cannon, man. People go ape for free shirts.
Nuts. You tell me I'm getting something free. Do you remember which game was it this past year? Was it a K-State game where they started chanting for chicken fingers?
It wasn't chicken fingers. It was breadsticks.
Breadsticks.
Yeah. So K-State had
right.
K-State had the promotion where if somebody on the other team missed both their free throw attempts in a trip to the line, all the students got free breadsticks from Pizza Hut. I can tell you that when it did happen, and I was there for it, never mind the end of the Sunflower Showdown, that was the loudest Bramlage Coliseum got all year. People love free food.
Yeah, I remember when it happened, the game we went to when they played TCU, and I was like, what are they chanting? Oh, breadsticks. And it happened. Manuel Miller, whoever missed 2 free throws, place went nuts.
It's absolutely ballistic. Yeah, people love free stuff. I want to know how they got the T-shirt cannon, would be my question.
Yeah, can you just buy one?
I would love to have a T-shirt cannon.
This is not the first T-shirt cannon story we've had on What Is Wrong With You.
Some texter from the 316 says some Yell leaders had friends on the inside.
Let's see. You can get a T-shirt cannon in black for $750.
Wow.
On eBay, or I'm sorry, on Amazon.
On Amazon.
This is like a T-shirt pistol. You can hold this with one hand.
Yeah, you really can. T-shirt launcher, aircannons.com.
Oh, good.
T-shirt cannons to promote your team, event, or business. They got 5 models of T-shirt gun. The Breeze 150 is the smallest of the air cannons. That'll run you $675. Then you got the Squall 250, so named because that's
the Squall.
That's the range. And you can launch multiple T-shirts at a time. That's going to run you close to $1,000. You have the Twister 325, which can launch up to 3 shirts at a time. That's going to run you $1,800. The Hurricane 400, which honest to God looks terrifying. It can reach the back row of practically any sized venue. Give people in the high seats a chance to catch your t-shirts.
Yeah, this is okay. So it lists
$2,300.
It lists what venue you should use these for. The lowest model, corporate training or parties, picnics, high school gyms. Then you have outdoor festivals and small concerts. The second biggest model, concerts, racetracks, and sporting events. The Hurricane 400 it recommends using at NBA, NFL, MLB games, and NASCAR.
They have built custom t-shirt cannons for the Chicago Bulls and Dallas Mavericks. They have built one that looks like a guitar, one that looks like a Cobalt drill, one that looks like a Lowe's hammer.
Yo, this guitar one slams. That is awesome.
They built one for Johnsonville Brats that looks like a cannon.
Yeah, I want one that looks like a cannon. I want one that I can light the fuse and it's going to launch a t-shirt.
We got to talk to LeBon. We got to see if we got to go in, all three of us, on a t-shirt cannon.
I mean, you're looking at $225 a person
for one of the hosses. You can rent a Hurricane 400 for a week for $600.
Oh God. If we don't do that, that's losing money at that point.
It really is.
We need to set up a remote somewhere and just blast people with t-shirts. All right, write this down. We're going to have a meeting on Monday morning.
Like the guy who used to take the cannonball to the gut like Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
It's just t-shirts to the gut from point blank range.
We do have to pick a winner. I think I'm probably going with the t-shirt cannon guys. The other woman, she's 24 years old and got really drunk. Don't be a racist, but like things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe don't do that if you're supposed to be a representative of your entire country. Probably not a smart idea.
And it's fashion.
True. I actually kind of respect the hustle here by these guys. Like, that's outside the box thinking.
Yeah, and they had to make some effort to get the t-shirt cannon.
Because we had the story a few years ago about the guys who were trying to drop contraband in with a drone over the walls.
Yeah.
Like, they're monitoring airspace over prisons. T-shirt cannon, they're not expecting that. So I respect the hustle there.
We had a texter send us a link to tshirtgun.com. They have something called the Def Leopard.
Oh.
Imagine being able to generate the same amount of noise as a passing train in the palm of your hand. It's like a handheld gun
with horns.
With horns.
We gotta do some research here.
Now, this is what we're going in on, like an air horn. Yeah. We're gonna stand on the roof of the Alpha Media Studios and blare the horn when it's 580 Sports Talk time. They'll be able to hear us out at Highland Park.
It's only $549.
Yeah, the three of us, that's less than $200 a pop person. Yeah.
Does this beat the meth-fueled self-baptism? No. That is our winner for the week. It runs the rack, the meth-fueled self-baptism. It wins What Is Wrong With You for this week. Brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. We'll talk maybe more t-shirt cannon and NFL position group rankings after this on 580 Sports Talk.
When hometown
break, we discovered there are some more raunchy items you can get from these online shops as well.
They'll make a custom-made T-shirt cannon to look like anything.
Really anything. Brendan and Dan here with you, by the way. It's a Feel Good Friday afternoon on 580 Sports Talk. Mitch Holthus is going to join us next hour to talk all about the Kansas City Chiefs and New Orleans Saints coming up on Sunday. I'm all in, by the way. One of these companies, they will make the stress balls that you can then launch with their cannons.
Yes, they have a stress ball Gatling gun, the folks at tshirtgun.com, who, if you're curious, they make the Boomer and Sooner launchers for the Oklahoma folks. But yeah, stress ball Gatling gun, which costs $4,000. It's capable of shooting 8 shots per second with a range of up to 150 feet, and it is self-loading.
Self-loading, wow.
So I think we need 3 of these stress ball Gatling guns, and you, me, and Jake just try and bombard each other. Because I think you can tote it on wheels. I think it's wheeled.
Oh yeah,
watching the instructional video here. Oh yeah, it's on wheels.
I did not know this world was out here. Somebody, by the way, got a custom-made air cannon that looks like a Coke freestyle machine, which is bizarre, but next level, and I really do respect it. Really quick, before we get too far down this rabbit hole and spend all of our station's funding for next year on T-shirt cannons, ESPN, Mike Clay of ESPN, put out a list today ranking every team in the league, 1 through 32, at every position group, the best and worst units for every single position. Number 1 for quarterback, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Duh. Number 1 for tight end, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. Duh. Offensive line comes in at number 4, which to me, right off the rip, feels a little bit low. They've got Philly, Cleveland, Detroit ahead of Kansas City.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's defensible.
That's fine. Fair enough. Number 7 for off-ball linebacker. So
not your edge rushers.
Non-edge guys, which I think is fair.
Yeah. In fact, it's higher than I would have expected. And it's a tip of the cap to Nick Bolton. And,
yeah.
We talked a little bit last week when we had Mitch Holthus on last week about Nick Bolton and how his reputation is starting to grow, I think, in the eyes of, observers across the league and fans. And this is another example of that.
The interior defensive line is listed at number 13. Don't know how Chris Jones plays into that. So that's kind of a null set right there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know how they're judging that. So I'm throwing that one out. But then you've got this. Running back is ranked 23rd out of 32. Wide receiver ranked 26th. Edge rusher is ranked 24th. And safety is ranked 26th. Of all of those, to be completely honest with you, I think the one I've got the biggest bone to pick is with running back. I don't think the Chiefs have a bottom 10 running back room in the league.
No, I really don't.
They've got a bona fide number 1 in excellent number 2, who's also one of the best pass catching backs in the league. Mm-hmm. And then whoever number 3 is either literally the fastest player in the rookie class or a guy who has been a starter before and just kind of fell out of favor. That's not a bottom 10 running back group, and I'm certain of that.
Stop me when I get to a team that has a better running back number 2 than Derrick McKinnon. I'm just going to go through the teams that are ranked above the Chiefs at 23rd. Number 22, Buffalo.
No.
It's insulting, frankly, that you would rank Buffalo's running backs ahead of Kansas City.
That is insulting.
That's preposterous. 21, Washington.
They got rid of J.D. McKissick, Brian Robinson, and
Antonio Gibson.
Nah, Chiefs are better.
Philadelphia suffered some losses at the position. I think their running back 2 is probably Rashad Penny.
Yeah.
Who's made of glass.
Yeah, he is made of glass. I can at least see that one, but it's funny because McKinnon's been so healthy recently, but that's been the knock on him too in his career. I can at least see an argument there.
What about Cincinnati? They lost their number 2 back. Samaje Perine is a free agent.
I don't even know who would be number 2 for Cincinnati right now.
And if you want to say, okay, Joe Mixon is so much better than Isaiah Pacheco that it makes the difference, I don't know that it does, because there's a reason we know Samaje Perine's name, because there are things Joe Mixon can't do.
They drafted Chase Brown out of Illinois, who I like. Chase Brown was awesome in college. And they've got Travion Williams, Chris Evans. They're just guys. I like Chase Brown. Chase Brown's never played.
What about Dallas's number 2 running back? Dallas is 18th.
Who comes after
I
Pollard?
like Tony Pollard a lot. I think Tony Pollard is better than Isaiah Pacheco.
I would agree with that,
but
I think that's fair. ESPN's depth chart currently has them with a gentleman I do not know. Malik Davis is their number 2. They also on their roster have Deuce Vaughn, obviously, and Ronald Jones.
Oh, yeah. Well,
who is suspended.
They're going to be number 1 at the end of the year because Deuce Vaughn's going to have.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn's going to be awesome.
But no, as of right now, no.
Yeah.
Chiefs are better.
Houston 17th in anything is weird to me.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce
had a good rookie year.
Good rookie year before he got hurt. I like him a lot.
Like Dare Ogunbowale, they get Devin Singletary, but like there's a reason the Bills, a contending team, were willing to let him go.
Okay, if you wanted to make that argument that you would take that Texans top 2 over the Chiefs top 2, I would listen to it. You said they're 17th. That is not 6 spots better than the Chiefs. No way at all.
Like I think you get to 15 New England before I say, yeah, that one I would definitely rank above Kansas City. Anybody between New England at 15 and Kansas City at 23, I think you can very fairly argue Kansas City should be ranked ahead of them.
Yeah,
and they
I
absolutely
agree.
should be ahead of Buffalo. That's preposterous.
To be completely honest with you, do you know who running back 2 is in New England right now? This is per ESPN's depth chart.
I'm sure it's like James White again somehow.
Ty Montgomery.
Oh,
were you aware he was still in the NFL?
I was not.
Yeah, that's who their number 2. Like Ramondre Stevenson's great.
Yeah, a really good player.
The other positions that are not ranked super high for the Chiefs, I get it at wide receiver. I think we also got proof last year. It doesn't really matter as long as we have just pieces. It's fine. Edge, I guess I get. Amenahu has never put up huge numbers, and you've got a lot of rookies.
There's a lot to prove, and then there's like a legit, like they're ranked 1 spot below Carolina. Carolina's got a legit star at the position of Brian Burns, rather.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And 26 safety. I get it.
I think that's too low.
Yeah, I would say so. I think Reed is a good player. I'm all in on Brian Cook.
Yeah, we're both really high on Brian Cook. That might be our Brian Cook homerism and bias shining through there. But yeah, I was surprised to see because then based on the composite rankings, Mike Clay says this is the 7th best roster in the league. And I do not think the Cleveland Browns have a better roster than the Kansas City Chiefs.
They do not. I am certain that they do not.
And there's the extent to which none of this matters because the gap between number 1 at quarterback is the one that matters the most.
Yeah, it's true. I also think the Chiefs are better roster than the Chargers. We're doing the Chargers thing again. Get ready, guys. We're doing the Chargers thing again. We are. We got 1 hour left of 580 Sports Talk, and it's coming up after the news.
Moments like my
580 Sports Talk today, final hour for this week. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us throughout the day today. If you've missed any of the show, head to our website, 580wibw.com. Way more simple than it used to be. Nice and easy. You already know us as 580WIBW. Just type that in, hit .com, boom, you're right there. That is where you can find the podcast version of the show. Just hover over the podcasts tab right in the middle of the page. Click 580 Sports Talk. Boom, you are right there. Hour by hour breakdown of the show. We've got a little overtime coming up at the top of the 6 o'clock hour today. We'll listen back to our conversation with Matt Derrick from earlier on this afternoon, our Chiefs insider, looking ahead to Chiefs Saints coming up this weekend. So that's coming up just after the top of the 6 o'clock hour. Then we've got Royals pregame at 6:30 for game 1 of 2 against the Cardinals coming up this weekend. First pitch set for 7:10 tonight. In this hour of the show, we'll get to our headlines here momentarily. We will also talk to Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, here in just a little bit for today's Chiefs Training Camp Report, brought to you by Hy-Vee and by Azura Credit Union. And we will look ahead to that Royals series as well. Plus your texts, 785-272-9429, and your YouTube comments. YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Haven't mentioned this angle today, as we talked about throughout the week. 580 Sports Talk, starting on Monday, back to 4 hours. It is going to be 2 until 6 every single weekday. Brendan, Dan, Jake, the three of us back together again every single day for 4 hours. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. That starts on Monday, August 14th at 2 o'clock in all the different ways you can hear us, AM, FM, on the website, and on YouTube as well. And today was Fulton's final day. Fulton just took off a little while ago, cleaned up the desk, and he is headed on to the next stage of his professional career. So we had a very nice send-off, and we're going to miss him, but very happy for him as well. But this is the final 3-hour edition of 580 Sports Talk.
Yeah, the final episode of the Brendan and Dan era, as it were.
Yeah.
We've been doing this together since mid-May of last year, so just about 15 months, almost on the nose. And this is the end of that particular era of the show. And it's a show, obviously, is the flagship sports talk program of 580 WIBW that has had a lot of eras.
Yeah.
And this is one that we're closing the book on, but it's definitely not like a sad day because, again, we get to expand it another hour, and we get to have Jake back with us, and we're gonna have a lot of fun in the 4-hour configuration.
Yeah, so the two of us are not going anywhere. In fact, you're getting more of us because we're going to be on for the extra hour from 2 until 3. Plus, throw in Jake, so it'll be like us, but with more Steve Winwood.
Yeah, a lot more dad jokes.
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Way more dad jokes. We have had people throughout the week asking, what will be on the air from noon to 2. We can tell you that 580 WIBW will be airing the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show from noon to 2 instead of Sports Talk. That is, if you are familiar with them, maybe you're excited to hear that, in which case credit Brendan and I, because we chose that and it was entirely our decision. Or maybe you're not excited to hear that, in which case don't blame us because we had nothing to do with it. But for those who have asked, it will be the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show from noon to 2 ahead of 580 Sports Talk Monday and moving forward.
So be ready. 2 o'clock Monday. That is when you should tune in. If you've been used to 3 o'clock, you got the alarm set on your phone, maybe on your smartwatch, and you say, oh man, 3 o'clock, got to get to Sports Talk. No, you got to adjust that. It's like you're falling back or jumping forward or whatever.
Yeah, you're falling back, but you don't lose an hour. You kind of gain an hour.
You get an hour. Really, we're bending space and time.
Yes.
For you.
It's an extra hour of all of us. Like an extra hour of Jake, an extra hour of me, an extra hour of Brendan.
So, again, that is coming up starting on Monday at 2 o'clock right here on 580 WIBW. And we're still taking your input throughout the show today, text line, and in the YouTube comments. With that, let's get to today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. You'll never believe this, Dan, but this week we've got more news on realignment, or at least the wake that has been left behind by realignment. The Pac-12, as we know, has been managed very poorly for a long time. Larry Scott, the probably worst commissioner in major college sports history. George Kliavkoff has not been very good at his job either. And even more so maybe than either of them, the presidents of the Pac-12 schools have been handling this as poorly as possible. Just a disaster from beginning to end for pretty much all of them. And USC and UCLA are lucky that they got a life raft earlier than anybody else, after USC in particular did a lot to destabilize the conference, but at this point, that's neither here nor there. Well, according to reporting from John Canzano, who is currently writing for his own website, johncanzano.com, he also is a radio host in Oregon on multiple stations, if you're not familiar with him to this point.
He is best known perhaps for having been cataclysmically wrong pretty much from stem to stern about
every single turn,
everything regarding the Pac-12 the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, he's had George Klivakov's boot firmly in his mouth constantly ever since Klivakov got hired for this job. Not fired as of yet. But he does have an interesting piece that came out last night or yesterday afternoon about what he calls the downfall of the Pac-12 conference. How about this? ESPN had originally offered last year the Pac-12 a media deal that would have been roughly around $30 million. So approximately the same that the Big 12 was getting.
Which is $31.7 million.
Yeah, so $30 million per school, excuse me.
$30 million per school.
$30 million total is like what the Big East deal is because they don't have football, or the Mountain West or something. But that's what they were going to get, $30 million per school. They would be on ESPN. Pac-12 After Dark would stay. They would get to be on the big network. They'd probably be treated better by the big network, to be honest with you. They'd have some games on ABC, late night ESPN, all that stuff. They said no. They said no, we wanted more. We want to be like the SEC. We want to be like the Big Ten. We're above that. The conference is now dead. It is deader than disco. That's where they are right now. They had the opportunity, man. They really thought they could do more than that. I saw Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports phrase it this way. Both the Big 12 and the Pac-12 were given bad hands in this round of cards. Brett Yormark did the best he could with what he was dealt. The Pac-12 got a bad hand and somehow played it even worse. And I think that's a very apt analogy.
It's understanding who you are and understanding where you fit in and what your value really is. And the Big 12, from the moment Texas and Oklahoma departed, they had to decide, okay, what are we going to be? Who are we moving forward? And they made decisions that have made sense. They have hired a forward-thinking commissioner. They have known exactly what they want to be and what they aspire to be. And the Pac-12 did not have that same amount of perspective. I called it institutional arrogance when we talked about it at length last week. And there is perhaps no greater example of it than the thought that we're going to do $50 million a year. We're going to do that without the Los Angeles television market and USC and UCLA. We're worth $50 million a year per school. And ESPN walked away. ESPN said, yeah, okay, good luck with that. And then went, and that's how essentially the Big 12 was able to jump the line because ESPN had a budget for a Power 5 conference to be the main network there. And the Big 12 swooped in and they took it because they understood, hey, that's a pretty good deal for us. That's going to make our schools happy. That's going to give us a chance to compete.
It was a difference to me in retrospect of knowing who you are and knowing who you think you want to be. The Pac-12 still believed itself to be, and I speak of the Pac-12 as the presidents and chancellors and their commissioner, of being an elite athletic and academic conference, which relative to the rest of the Power 5, they are not, and they haven't been. Who was the last Pac-12 team to make the playoff?
Washington?
2016.
Yeah.
Oregon made the first one. Washington made the one in 2016. That was a great team with Chris Peterson leading the way.
Yeah.
That's it. USC didn't make it there. USC, you want to talk about hubris, they refused to hire a real defensive coordinator. They end up losing to Tulane in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
They're not, you're not that guy, pal. That's what everyone needs to be saying to the Pac-12. Basketball. When's the last Pac-12 national champion?
1997, Arizona Wildcats.
That's the last one. They haven't even been a regular Final Four conference in years.
I don't know that they've played for a title since UCLA in 07.
I believe you're correct. Yeah. That was it. Lost to Florida. The national championship game. Being great at sailing and swimming is awesome for the Olympics. You know what it's not awesome for? Creating a TV product.
Yeah.
And like it or not, that's what the business is. So the Big 12, on the other hand, and we've talked about this at length before, they said, hey, look, the Big 10 don't want Kansas. The SEC don't want K-State. Then no one wants Oklahoma State. The Pac-12 didn't want Texas Tech. We like what we have. No one else seems to want what we have. So you know what? We're gonna come together. We're gonna make true unity out of our group.
Because you know what we do have? We have devoted fan bases. We have people who care a lot about the athletic programs at our schools, and that's going to have value to somebody.
And it did. Because you know what? Now ESPN and Fox know, hey, we're going to build up the Big Ten and the SEC games more, but we're going to get people tuning in and caring about these games. We'll talk about them because people care about them. And instead of trying to build up our ego, let's just figure out other ways to be successful. Let's go to Rucker Park and work with kids. Let's play in Mexico. And even if I don't like all of these ideas, what did the Pac-12 do to try to make itself more appealing? What did the Pac-12 try to do to make itself look like a bigger deal than maybe the rest of the world perceived it to be? At least people are taking note of the Big 12. They're saying, damn, they're doing a lot. Pac-12 did nothing except sit on its hands and say, ooh, look at our beach volleyball national championships. Yeah, good luck with that.
You know what else was wild from that Canzano piece was Apple's offer has been pretty widely reported. It was going to be $25 million a year for the whole thing. Like they were going to stream everything. And if you wanted to watch Pac-12 sports, you were going to have to buy a subscription on top of, I believe, your Apple TV subscription. So if you already had Apple TV, let me rephrase. If you already had Apple TV, you were still going to have to pay on top of that for the Pac-12. But if you didn't have Apple TV Plus, you could still pay for the Pac-12, probably at an increased rate. But they were looking at a $100 a year annual subscription fee.
Insane.
And they thought they were going to sell 5 million of those. Look, I love Pac-12 After Dark. I do. I'm a college football sicko. I will watch any and all college football that you put on television. I am not paying $100 a year for the privilege of watching the Pac-12.
No.
And there are not enough people out there who are going to do that to ever get the money to a point. The AD at Arizona used the same analogy that I inadvertently came up with last Friday on the show. It was going to be like selling candy for Little League.
Yeah.
Or like Girl Scout cookies door to door. They'd be begging people to buy these subscriptions. And not going to have a lot of success on $100 a pop. That was preposterous.
No, absolutely outrageous. So worth it. Again, maybe not the most unbiased reporter out there, but a really interesting piece from John Canzano about what happened to the Pac-12.
Here is my favorite news story of the day. It came from yesterday, and San Francisco 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan's remarks. Apparently, if the San Francisco 49ers had found a way without a real quarterback to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game and advance to the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, they had a plan as to who was going to play quarterback in that Super Bowl. And his name was Phillip Rivers. Apparently, the former Charger/Colt quarterback had been the contingency plan all year long for the 49ers. Shanahan told the media yesterday he was prepared to. That's stuff we talked about throughout the whole year. We would have had to have seen how that was for the Super Bowl, but that was the plan most of the year.
What?
Phillip Rivers.
Word?
Phillip Rivers would have been coming off the oak for the first time since 2020 to play in a Super Bowl. I'm now upset that we were robbed of that. Like, we got one of the all-time great Super Bowls and a Chiefs championship, and that's like, I don't want to trade that for anything necessarily, but the thought of Phillip Rivers leading the San Francisco 49ers 2+ years after his last pro game and trying to win a Super Bowl, I would have loved to have seen how that went. I really would have loved that. Would have been amazing.
Yeah, man. Like, why do you think Phillip Rivers, ice cold, fresh off like a playoff run in Alabama high school football, is going to be able, and like becoming a dad again, is going to be a good idea to bring into your team? Do you know that Phillip Rivers can run your offense? Do you know that Phillip Rivers can do the things you're asking him to do?
Apparently, this was like Kyle Shanahan was keeping it. Like, this was the thing tucked in his back pocket. This was his ace in the hole. If all hell broke loose, if all else failed, if he couldn't make it shake after Trey Lance broke his leg, if Brock Purdy wasn't the guy, if Josh Johnson got concussed, The ace in the hole was Phillip Rivers.
Wow. That is truly unbelievable.
It is.
I wish I had the numbers of how often 49ers quarterbacks took snaps out of the gun versus under center. You can't put Phillip Rivers under center because that's something that they do a lot in San Francisco, given how much they run the ball. You remember watching Ben Roethlisberger the last year of his career? You know what he literally never did? Go under center. He couldn't do it because as soon as he turned around, his big, slow oaf self was going to get knocked on his butt. Phillip Rivers couldn't do that. He didn't have any mobility at the end of his career.
It's just such a funny image.
It's an insane image.
It would have been 2 weeks of this would be one of the greatest stories in NFL history. And then Chris Jones would have turned him into a grease stain on the field in the first half. And the Chiefs would have won 49-3.
I understand the 49ers team perspective all offseason that, man, if Purdy's healthy, we win that game. Like, you've got to believe in yourself, right? You believe in the guys with you, but everyone wish casts to a degree. Dude, you got your ass beat. That was not a loss. You got turned into a crying pile on the floor. You got destroyed, dog. You had no chance in that game.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles beat those buns. Come on.
And again, the Eagles were so dominant that they injured Brock Purdy, not on purpose, but that's the level of violence they were perpetrating on your offense from the word go.
Come on, man. Yeah, that's a bad look for the 49ers.
I don't know why you'd admit that.
Yeah, I don't really know why either. This has been a big week for why did you say that out loud in the NFL?
Right.
Kyle Shanahan, why would you admit that someone who hasn't played in that long, who looked like he did at the end of his career, would be your backup option with 2 weeks to learn an entire playbook? Ron Rivera, why would you admit that your players feel bullied by Eric Bieniemy? Why would you say that out loud? I don't understand, man. I really, really do not understand. That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines for this Friday afternoon. We got a little Chiefs football coming up on Sunday. First preseason game of the year. The Chiefs are taking on the New Orleans Saints. They will be on the road for that one. Noon kickoff on the Chiefs radio network right here on 580 WIBW. So who better to preview the game than the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. He'll join us for our training camp report after this on 580 Sports Talk.
Oh, no. What?
For the final time this week, as it is a Friday afternoon after all, when it's time for us to get into our Chiefs training camp report with the one and only Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azure Credit Union. Ask Haven Byrne, Crystal Rippey, or Melissa Hunter at Azure Credit Union about using the Credit Union Advantage for your home loan. Mitch, how amped are you that even if it's the preseason, we get some real pads on, helmets on competitive football this weekend?
Well, the quarterbacks, rookies, and injured guys reported on the 18th of July. Then everybody else came in the 21st. I've been at camp since the 19th. Everybody's a little anxious to go, let's go do this. I mean, it's time. Camp is sequential. There was a podcast that Matt McMullen, our senior team reporter, did with me early on about 2 weeks ago. It's like the on-ramp. You have the on-ramp, and then you have the dog days where they've been grinding. And this, frankly, is the third phase of camp. And it's time to do this. Let's go play a game and see how these guys react in those kind of circumstances and on the road against the Saints.
As you mentioned to us as we were going off the air yesterday, Mitch, it's checklist day with a preseason game coming up this weekend. Sunday, noon kick against the Saints, the semi-rare Sunday preseason game. Should be fun. I know the Saints have a lot of high expectations in a fairly down division. I think that's fair to say in the NFC South. They've got a new quarterback. Don't know if Derrick Carr is going to end up playing. Chiefs know him obviously very well, Mitch. Let's just start right at the very top of the list. What are the biggest things, the biggest storylines that you're going to be keeping an extra eye on coming up on Sunday?
Well, they also have Jameis Winston, who's thrown for 5,000 yards in a season. I think he also had 59 interceptions. You rarely see a 5,000-yard passer in a first preseason game. Play quite a bit, but I think they will. Here's our checklist. The Chiefs team has faced, in my opinion, and not rocket science, the breaking news, three main flashpoints in this camp. One is Chris Jones holdout. So what has that done? It's opened the door for, and you're going to get a KU K-State flavor to the first two points to follow here. And that is Daniel Wise, the former KU Jayhawk and Washington Commander, has gotten most of the reps in the absence with the first team of Chris Jones. Now, guys you don't know about, Phil Hoskins, Matt Dickerson, Keandre Coburn, the rookie out of Texas. Chris Williams is one we'll talk about, who is a rookie free agent out of Wagner College. But there's just a bunch of guys in there. Now, the Saints will try to run the ball. If the Chiefs are getting run roughshod over in the middle, it won't be a good day. But somebody's got to, when Chris shows up, somebody's going to fill in probably until Chris is ready to rock. All right, second flashpoint is Charles Omenihu's 6-game suspension to start the season. Now, Omenihu is eligible to play in the preseason and will. But you also have to figure out what you're going to do in Omenihu's absence when he misses nearly a third of the season. And K-State's Felix Eneduke-Uzama. Felix said a slow start to camp. This is a big game for Felix. Felix needs to come out and show something and show some pop in this game because the Chiefs on the edge are going to do it by committee. Karlaftis leads the way, but without Omenihu, guys are going to be counted on for a lot of snaps, maybe earlier than expected. The other flashpoint is the loss of Kadarius Toney throughout this camp to a knee injury. That leads you into the wide receivers, and everybody wants to ask about him. Well, there's 13 of them in camp, counting Toney. I think 6 for sure will make the roster. I've even heard inklings of 7, which is a lot. So somewhere this roster is going to be shorted. But of the 13 to wedge into 6 or 7, there's somebody's going to get knocked out that's pretty good. So who in this wide receiver race, which to me is pretty even across the board, with Sky Moore being ahead of everybody else by just a tick, who's going to play themselves either on the team or off the team? And these preseason games will dictate a great measure of that.
I feel much smarter, Mitch, because earlier today, a couple of the things I said I was going to be paying attention most to was the wide receiver battles in the back half of that room and what's going on with the defensive line. So I feel very smart and prepared for this game. I did want to follow up when it comes to that edge group, knowing that Omenihu is going to miss the first third approximately of the season. Felix gets a lot of the headlines because he was the first round pick, 31st overall. Totally understand that. And I'm bullish on what he can be in his career. I'm fascinated by some of the guys who aren't getting quite as much attention. A guy like BJ Thompson, who was also a draft pick this year. And admittedly, I didn't watch a whole lot of Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks football this past year, so I don't know a ton about his game. But I'm excited for a guy like him or Malik Herring, who's still around, even Josh Kando, who I know hasn't been on the field a ton in his career with the Chiefs. I'm kind of excited to see how these guys are going to push maybe it's just for a practice squad spot, but how they're going to push in this first game too, given the kind of opportunity with the Amenahu suspension.
Yeah, and don't forget Mike Dana in this
Right.
equation, but I don't know if he'll play much. He's got he's nursing a calf injury, although he's been back, and Holthus has been fantastic. But you mentioned a lot of guys there. I can't believe you didn't follow Lumberjack football. You're a big Abilene Christian fan. But when you look, Malik Herring, don't sleep on Malik Herring either. He's been better. Now, Malik Herring's an interesting story. We'll get into it more on Sunday. But remember, he was a really good player at Georgia, and he was laid out to be a pretty high draft pick in the 21 draft. He tore his ACL in the Senior Bowl, and it just completely wrecked the train for him. So the Chiefs take him. He's been on the practice squad the last 2 years. He's got he's been on the active roster a little bit. But I'm glad you mentioned him because he's one to really watch. Now, I'm with you on B.J. Thompson, too. It's ironic because Tano Passanio now plays for the Saints. We'll see Tano in this game in an enemy uniform. Tano was better than people realized because he was disrupted. The 7'4" wingspan, most notable. B.J. Thompson will give you some Tano Passanio wingspan. So can he be disruptive? Yes, Kando's been around, but to me, the more intriguing guys here, it starts with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Second would be Malik Herring, because I think he's going to be game ready. And then third, in a longer play, would be B.J. Thompson, the rookie out of Stephen F. Austin, who started at Baylor. He was a pretty good player at Baylor. In fact, he blocked like 3 kicks when he was at Baylor, and then ended up with the Lumberjacks.
Our guest is Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, joining us here for a training camp report on 580 Sports Talk. Those are brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union here on 580 WIBW. Mitch, on offense, you mentioned there are 13 wide receivers in camp, and a lot of them are either new to the Chiefs, like a Richie James, or new to the league, like a Rashee Rice. And then there's a player like Justin Ross, who's not new to the Chiefs, but hasn't played a competitive football game in a really long time. Do you think the Chiefs may try to get some of those players more reps, more touches, get them comfortable, see how they respond? Is that a common thing that teams like to get those rookies and first-year guys involved early in the preseason just so they can get a comfort level?
It's kind of common but it's really a discipline of Andy Reid. He puts so much on Rashee Rice right now that I do think that there's going to be targets towards Rashee and some expectations just to see what he can handle, because it's been that way since rookie minicamp back in the first weekend of May. But I think we can categorize these receivers. You've got Sky Moore, who will play some in this game, and mentioned he was our focus on Tuesday. Has had an outstanding camp. The sneaky improvement has come in Marquez Valdes-Scantling, where the back of his baseball card has been, wow, yards per catch, but the catch radius not very good. Our catch radius is good. It's the catch ratio that's not very good. Catch one, drop one, catch one, drop one. Well, it's been running every route, running all different parts of slot trips, X, added more to his plate. So put Sky and MBS over to the left. And then in the next group would be the Justin Ross, Richie James. What do you have with Richie James? Don't forget Justin Watson in this discussion. He's big in this discussion. We kind of forget about him till, he had a 67-yard catch against the Raiders, and he had a 41-yard touchdown against the Chargers in week 2. So that group is kind of a next group, in my opinion, would be the guys that haven't had a lot of pro production, but could. And so I think they'll be under a microscope in this game and actually the next 2 preseason games after this one.
How about on the defensive side of the ball with some young guys like a Shamari Connor, Nick Jones, and Echo Boydo? You're talking about 3 defensive backs. Last year, Jalen Watson and Josh Williams were rookies at this position that really flashed in the preseason and showed that they might have the capability of being contributors as rookies. And lo and behold, they were in a big way for the Chiefs last year. What roles will we see Jones, Boydo, and Connor in their first preseason action? And how likely are they to maybe flash or show us a little something against the Saints?
Let me take your question, and then let me throw in a couple of offensive players, because it was actually a next point to watch in this game, and that is the either lower round draft picks or the undrafted free agents that have been bragged up, and I've been bragging about them too, including Derrick Prince. Now, in my brief 30 years in this league, I have seen where guys have been OTA All-Stars or minicamp All-Stars or training camp All-Stars. They get into the preseason games, and there's wet spots under the kitchen table. So you're like, ooh, this isn't going so good, and it makes you rethink things. So on offense, it's Derrick Prince and a guy named Nico Remigio, who's Fresno State. Don't sleep on him. We'll talk about him Sunday too. But let's go to defense, because those are the two on offense I'm curious about. Defense is really interesting. Nick Jones, the 7th round corner out of Ball State. I've been bragging him up. He's playing great. Local tie, Lawrence High, Echo Boydo today was working. He's worked with the 1s. Today he was working with the number 2s in a 10-10-10 practice, which gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what they're going to do on Sunday. Echo Boydo is going to play a lot in this game. And it's one where, we think, just blow off a preseason game. This is a Super Bowl for Echo Boydo. If he comes out and lights it up the way he's been practicing, then all of a sudden he's a real deal. If he gets lit up, then you rethink it, going back to what we're saying about the two offensive players. So those two guys on defense, to me, are most notable. Shamari Connor will be fine. I think he'll make the team. He's more of a special teams guy right now. It becomes mathematics. How many corners and how many safeties do you keep? And with Shamari Connor, he could be a 5th safety or a 4th safety, but he's in a battle with Deion Bush. But Connor's fine. It's Boydo and Nick Jones. Number 31 is Nick Jones. Number 40 is Echo Boydo. And they become very interesting to me in this Saints game.
Last couple of questions for Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, joining us for our Chiefs training camp report here on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by both Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Mitch, are there any older guys who have, maybe were just brought into camp this year, who have been in the league for a little bit, or guys who have been on this roster for a little bit, who it really feels to you need to have a good showing, not just in this preseason game, but in all 3 exhibitions, who really need to have that strong showing to make sure they make the roster?
I think there's some curiosity there. Blake Bell, because if you're going to keep 7 wide receivers, I'm not sure you're going to keep 4 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so Blake Bell comes to mind just because Matt Bushman is playing very well. I'm not saying, you just ask. I'm not saying they're in trouble, but I'm trying to think of answers. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one that he'll get snaps in this game. He'll get a lot of snaps, I think. And if is he going to make this team? They're going to keep 4 running backs. What happens there? So those two on offense come to mind. Defensively, it would be those guys that I mentioned that are kind of journeymen in the defensive line. Other than that, I think you're pretty much set. I might throw Richie James in that. Just he needs to win the punt return job. We need Derrick Prince to say, you got kickoffs. Richie James has punts, and don't even think about it anymore. But Richie's been around a while, but he's played good ball. But I'm just trying to think in your category, your question, who would be answers. But I think the most notable would be Blake Bell at tight end and probably Clyde at running back.
Last thing I've got for you, Mitch. Andy Reid talks, he talked about it a few years ago after the Super Bowl 54 win. We've already heard it from him at the ring ceremony and ever since then, when it comes to this season after Super Bowl 57, that, hey, that was last year. That was fun. We had a good time celebrating, but it's back to work. This is the 2023 season now. We're looking ahead to Super Bowl 58, all of that. You are close to Coach Reid, obviously, and you get to talk to him all the time. How ready is he to put on the headset again and stop hearing about last year's Super Bowl and start actually thinking about, I know he's thinking about it, but have more people actually be thinking about this upcoming team?
He was doing that in March and April and May. He seriously was. Now we had the ring ceremony, but after the draft, and we're starting rookie mini camp, he was on. He was on to the 64th season of Chiefs football. And then the ring ceremony came up. He's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that for one night. But that was it. He turned the page a long time ago. One of the things I'm going to ask him about our pregame is he won a Super Bowl at the Superdome. He was the Green Bay quarterbacks coach for Favre when they won it in the 96 season in 97. He's been down there a bunch. And we won in 2020, the COVID year. Clyde actually got broken in half in that game. We beat the Saints that year on the road, did that game from the studio. But there's some history of Andy going back there that I think is kind of fun. But all of that, he's ready to put on the headset to answer your question, but he was ready to do that on May the 1st.
We can't wait for the preseason opener coming up on Sunday, noon kickoff on the Chiefs Radio Network. Mitch Holthus and the whole crew will be on the call. And Mitch, again, joining us here this afternoon for our Chiefs training camp report, brought to you by both Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Talk to Haven, Crystal, and Melissa about the credit union advantage for your home loan at Azura. Mitch, as always, we appreciate the time. Have a blast with the preseason opener on Sunday, and we will talk to you Monday afternoon.
Don't sleep on these preseason games. Honestly, pay attention to them. Sunday at noon is awesome because there's not a lot of distractions. But there's a lot to take and devour here. These championship seasons have been like St. Joseph's, the potting soil. These preseason games are too. There's a lot going on here, more than meets the eye. So if you're a fan, I would just give it 3 hours and jump right in the middle of it and just inhale all you can.
I'm psyched. I'm pumped up for it. Mitch, thanks so much, man.
Yeah. See you guys.
That is Mitch Holthus, the one and only, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, joining us for today's Chiefs Training Camp Report, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Let's get to a quick break. Royals baseball coming up this weekend as well. They'll play tonight and tomorrow. Not Sunday, though. Don't forget, off day Sunday against the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll break down the I-70 series after this on 580 Sports Talk. 6 on 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Heasdan. The final 3-hour edition of 580 Sports Talk. Back to 4 hours, bringing Jake back into the fold starting on Monday at 2 o'clock. Coming up just after 6 o'clock today, we've got a little overtime for you, 580 Sports Talk overtime. We'll hear from Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider, who we spoke to earlier this afternoon, getting you ready for Chiefs versus Saints coming up this weekend. Again, that's coming up in overtime just after the show closes up today. And we've got Royals baseball tonight, 6:30 pregame, 7:10 first pitch, Royals versus Cardinals. We got the explanation earlier for why it's only a 2-game series. It still is dumb that it's going to mean a Sunday off day. It's very stupid.
Yes.
I don't care what your explanation is, what your process was. It is dumb to not have a baseball game on a Sunday afternoon in the summertime.
Agreed.
Just ridiculous. Coming up for the Royals, well, let's also note the history from last night. Royals were shut out.
13th time this year. That is that leads Major League Baseball. Most times being shut out. I think they had 5 leadoff hits last night and then just couldn't build an inning.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, it's what happens when you're bad, though. I mean, it's not really a shock.
Right.
So it is what it is. You noted, though, Alec Marsh, no home runs allowed.
Yeah. 5 okay innings from Marsh. She gave up runs in the 4th and 5th, and that was sufficient for the Red Sox last night, but he was mostly fine, I thought. I really like the shape of his breaking ball. I confess, I haven't watched a ton of Marsh. I just haven't had the occasion to. The Royals baseball I've watched, I haven't seen him pitch a lot of it. I just haven't lined up to watch his starts.
Sure.
But I watched a few innings of him last night. I really like the shape of his breaking ball. Fastball's just a bit too hittable right now. He's got to be much better locating that fastball. Maybe, through the end of the year, because he was coming off of an arm injury, maybe as the year goes on, he gets into next year, maybe gains a little more velocity, gets back into the upper 90s where he's worked before. That could help him a lot. But there's something there. I think patience. I would preach patience with Alec Marsh.
Tonight, going on the mound for the Royals opener action, it is going to be Coleman and Zerpa going. Dylan Coleman, Angel Zerpa. I like Zerpa. I do still think there's something there. Maybe that's just me wish casting, hoping for something, some oasis in the desert. But I do kind of like Zerpa's game. That's what the Royals are going to do. The Cardinals are going to send out Adam Wainwright, who in your kids might say this phrase. He's ass. He sucks. He is garbage this year. I know he's had a great career.
He's had an awesome career.
Cardinals fans, get off my back. The 2023 version of Adam Wainwright sucks.
Yeah, ERA in the 7s. He's given up 14 hits per 9.
In the 7s, it's closer to 8 than it is to 7, too.
Yeah. He's at 198 career wins, and there's absolutely no guarantee he's going to get to 200. Like,
no.
When the season began, you felt like, oh, he'll get to 200. That'll be a nice moment. And here we are approaching mid-August. He's not there yet. And it is absolutely no guarantee the way he is pitched that he is going to get there. Cardinals fans and Royals fans can commiserate on that front, if in no other way, that they have a franchise great. And I think Greinke's going to the Hall of Fame. Wainwright is not, but like one of the best pitchers of the era is certainly a fair thing to say about Adam Wainwright.
Sure.
And certainly about Greinke. And both of those guys are kind of going out sad this year. It's not there for them anymore. They're just not able to fool guys the way they used to. And man, that's how it goes. Like that's ball, man. That's how it goes. You stop being able to fool hitters. You stop being able to get guys out. The hitters retire you more so than you decide to retire sometimes. And that's what's happening with Wainwright for sure. So the Royals should be able to jump on him tonight, and they might have to because Dylan Coleman is the opener. And his command issues are well chronicled. But, if he can escape with an inning or two and not too much damage done, we'll see how coming back behind him with a left-hander and Angel Zerpa affects the Cardinal lineup.
Adam Wainwright is not even getting through 5 innings per game, per outing this year. And I get why he came back. I do. Because he was 5 wins shy of 200 for his career. Last season, he wasn't even bad. His record was 11-12. 3.71 ERA. That was almost exactly even to his fielding independent numbers.
No,
he was fine.
Yeah, it was totally reasonable to expect that Wainwright would come back this year and be, even at age 41, a totally fine mid-rotation guy for the Cardinals. Just like it would have been fair to expect that the Cardinals would be in contention in the National League Central. Emphatically, neither of those things are happening.
He almost got to 200 innings last year at 40 years old.
Yeah.
And wheels just completely
He really is.
off.
Again, I don't think there's a Hall of Fame argument for Adam Wainwright, but one of the best pitchers of his era and did it well for longer than most guys get to. guy deserves his flowers. I'm not
Sure.
saying somebody doesn't belong in Cooperstown is not an insult. That should be an exclusive club. But yeah, he's been a great pitcher for a long time, and it's a little sad. Even I say this as somebody who is inclined to relish, and in fact has relished some of the Cardinals Schadenfreude from this year. But it has been a little bit depressing to see this for Adam Wainwright.
The best part of the weekend is Cole Reagans goes tomorrow.
Yes, it is. Saturday is Cole Reagans Day.
Yeah.
We are getting close to mark your calendars for Cole Reagans Day. One more good start, and I'm going to say we can go full steam ahead with that.
Okay. I'm fine with that. One more the rest of the year or one more in a row?
One more in a row.
Okay.
One more in a row, and we'll jump right to it. Especially against all that right-handed power in the Cardinal lineup.
Yeah, that's true. I'm even willing to give him one of the next two. If we get 4 out of 5, I'm willing to say, yeah, we're good. We're fine in that regard. So Cole Reagans goes tomorrow. Again, Royals versus Cardinals coming up tonight. Opener for the Royals, Wainwright for the Cardinals. Pregame at 6:30, following 580 Sports Talk Overtime right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Let's get to one final timeout. When we come back on the other side of this break, we'll wrap things up for this week and this afternoon with the final word.
When home
conclusion, you better wrap it up.
Finishing up 580 Sports Talk with the final word, Dan.
As we mentioned earlier and at the top of the hour, this is the end of an era, so to speak, in 580 Sports Talk, as since mid-May it has been a 3-hour program with yours truly and Brendan Dworzinski as your hosts. And I just want to use my final word today. Thank you for rocking with us this last 15 months. Thank you for enjoying the show, for consuming it however you consumed it, for enjoying what it was that we tried to do here. I can speak for myself. I know that this show means a lot to me, and I've appreciated this iteration of it and had a lot of fun with this iteration of it. I say that to you, the listener, and to you, Brendan, that this was a lot of fun these last 15 months, and I look forward to continuing the fun, welcoming Jake LeBon back to the 580 Sports Talk fold, expanding to 4 hours next week. We're going to have a blast, and we hope you stay with us because it's only going to the arrow's pointing up and to the right. always. So we're going to keep rocking this thing and getting better at it every day. And we appreciate you being a part of it.
Yeah, it has been a very bittersweet day, I think. I mean, a lot of good, a lot to celebrate. Obviously, our good friend Fulton Caster, today was his final day. It was also the final day of Mic'd Up, that show coming to a close. So always sad when a friend obviously leaves. You don't get to see him every day anymore. But this has been a blast doing this show for the last 15 months or so. We've tried some new things, done some new segments, come up with some new ideas, some creative and smart, some maybe we won't try again. Like that time I tried to open an hour with a different catchphrase and it was a complete disaster. Won't try that one again. But we appreciate you guys because it's fun for us, but we're glad that it is fun for you. We want to do something that is fun for you. So we appreciate you hanging out with us every single day. The YouTube, that has become a huge success. We appreciate everyone who has subscribed, watched. That's not going anywhere. Nothing AM, FM is going anywhere. You're just going to get more of 580 Sports Talk starting Monday from 2 until 6. And we're looking forward to it. Little sad today, but a lot of fun coming and a lot of excitement coming. So thanks to Dan and thank you to you guys as well for hanging out with us every single day here on a 580 Sports Talk from 3 until 6. And now starting on Monday from 2 until 6. Coming up tonight, we've got Royals baseball tomorrow night as well. Tonight, it's pregame coverage at 6:30, first pitch at 7:10. Following 580 Sports Talk overtime, Royals play the Cardinals again tomorrow. Then on Sunday at noon, preseason game number 1 for the Chiefs as they take on the New Orleans Saints. You can hear that game here on the Sports Voice of Kansas as well. We are back coming up on Monday from 2 until 6. Myself, Dan, and Jake Laban. So until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Appreciate you guys as always for listening to 580 Sports Talk.